I don't like being wasteful either. That's why I buy a boot that I've worn for 10 years. Like, people buying this stuff aren't buying it for a season and throwing it away. Hi everyone, it's Phil here from Ashland Leather, and today we are speaking with Dale. He's also known as aerosurferlv on Instagram and YouTube. Dale is a fellow leather boot enthusiast, and we had quite a long and wide-ranging conversation from everything from my time at Horween Leather Company to the leathers that we like and the boots we like. We've even had some different sizing tips and sole tips and lace tips. Please feel free to take a look at some of the timestamps below to find the topics that you're really into, or just enjoy it all the way through.
Well, man, I have to say this is great having you on because, yeah, I've followed you for probably a couple years now, and right here I have 3 of your wallets.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Got a couple Frank the Enforcers.
Yes, 2 Frank the Enforcers, which I love. I'm all about the minimalist wallets, and I was extra excited because this one was featured in your in one of your videos.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That's
cool.
Yeah.
You know what? That's one thing I miss about not being in the shop is and even when I was there, it's a pretty big challenge to do an hour. Like I guess that they're more like 15 minutes to 20-minute videos like every day. But I like really tried to push myself to do like document basically everything we ship out, and I've fallen off the wagon a bit, but it's such a fun experience to like you experience to see the thing you're going to get before you get it. And actually there's a bass guitar behind me that I ordered from this company that kind of does a similar thing to me, where it's like, although they're a little bit more semi-custom only, like there's no stock items, but they would show you the thing that you spec'd out, 8 weeks from when you order it. They would put up a photo of all the stuff, and it was so much fun to like refresh their page every day and then anticipate it, like, okay, when am I going to see it? And then you see it and you're like, oh my God, that's so awesome. I know it's coming now. It's just like this really special experience of being able to like see the thing before you get it. So I was trying to pull the experience I had from that guitar into what we do. And it's pretty hard. Like, if we're shipping out, sometimes we're shipping out 70 things in a day, and I don't know if people really want to sit through like an hour-long video. Like I can do it because I love, like, I've been doing those videos for a year, and I still feel like, I know I repeat myself, but I still get this like excitement from looking at every piece and just feeling it and it's sort of experiencing it. So I don't get bored of it, but I sometimes worry that doing too much of that might get a little stale. So I'm trying to do like what we're doing right now. I wanted to start doing like a live stream with this higher quality camera, and do like live sessions. And, they wouldn't have to take hours, but we could show you your wallet every day in a half hour. And then I don't have to like go edit a video and upload it. It's kind of a process. But yeah, like that was one of the reasons I picked up this camera and this setup I have right now to do stuff like that. And then my kid came a little early, so we'll have to get back to that when I'm back in the shop, which will be who knows when that's going to be. I'm trying to do the like be a good parent kind of thing and be a good partner before I commit going back to work. The whole goal of what I'm doing is to try to share that experience that I feel for the material with everybody and to help them make a good choice. I see you've got a bunch of really cool pairs of boots behind you, and yeah, like, I mean, it looks like a lot of great stuff in different colors. I mean, yeah. So it's like, how do I know, being a person on the internet, and like, there's not like in Chicago, there's no Alden store. You can't just like go check out all the Aldens. So the real question is how do you translate that experience of all these different sensory characteristics that the leather have? How do you translate that information across a camera? And the way I figured was the best was to get as high quality video as I could and just like nerd out about it and just tell people what I see. And that's just the leather. But what I suck at and what I love about you and some of the people that you guys have been chatting with on those live, not live chats, but the real boot talks. What I love about that is how you're sharing your experience with the things that you've picked up, not necessarily saying like, hey, this is the best. It's more like, this is what I see. And I appreciate that so much, because we just need people that aren't trying to sell you stuff, and just give a real firsthand experience with the product, so somebody can make a good choice. It's so hard because there's so many different brands to love, and the stuff's expensive. And it's just the biggest challenge to me. It all comes down to fit. And I wonder if maybe you have a resource for me to use that maybe we can share with the rest of the world. Is there like hey, I wear a 11 and a Nike running shoe, and a Brannick device is 10 and a half. Here's where you fit in, like all these different styles and lasts and brands. Is there something like that you're aware of?
No, there's not. And actually, that's why I started recently doing sizing videos. So what I'll do is I'll take a brand, or I'll take a last, and I'll compare that last to other boots that I have. When people have questions about sizing, they can sort of reference that, and it'll ease their mind. Because actually talking to Dave, because I talk to Dave a lot back and forth, and we developed the term fit anxiety. Fit anxiety is the anxiety you feel when you're trying out a new boot brand and you don't know how you want to size.
Right.
So that's the whole goal, is to sort of alleviate some of that fit anxiety, because I've sized wrong myself, and it's frustrating. Like you said, this stuff is expensive, and you want to get it right because you're spending your hard-earned money on this stuff, and you intend to have it for many years because they're heirloom quality pieces. And the worst thing is to have to let something go because you sized wrong. So to answer your question though, outside of that, no, there's not really a good resource aside from like those online things that I don't trust, like, oh, enter your information into our fit guide, and
then they spam you with a million emails or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I was actually taking my I have some Roy boots that I took out for a spin today. It was like the first not winter boot I wore in a while, and I was like, man, these are so comfortable. But honestly, they're probably like a half size too small for me, but they fit great now. The other example would be Vibergs I have. They're like the most uncomfortable things I've ever worn for like 3 months, and now they're by far the most. So it's hard to share that caveat and like the nuance in the sizing in like a number 10. Like, it's hard to just say like, get a 10 if you wear a 10 Nike, you know what I mean? So I think you'd have to have like a really, really knowledgeable person that has worn a crap ton of different footwear to make that database.
That's definitely true. And that's why, like, in my sizing videos, I put the boots next to each other so you could kind of see, and I show the length and I try to show the width. But actually, real quick, I want to show you. You brought up the Roy boot. I just got my boots resold today by my cobbler, so I'll show you that real quick.
Yeah, man. Are they crepe still?
No, they're now on the leather sole. I don't know.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, these are
those suede?
No, they're reverse tobacco chamois. They're the oiled rough out.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah,
those look great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. My cobbler Sonny, I'm not kidding. We just recorded a resole video today. But yeah, I'm glad you brought those up, because this was one of probably my 5th pair of Aldens. Just love the Roy boot, so I'm glad to know a fellow Roy boot owner.
Well, mine are. This is bringing up an interesting topic with a buddy of yours. Is mine are in Chrome XL. I'm very, very biased, so I like to sort of, when I explain my leather experience with people, it's very much like from a Horween like first perspective, which is not necessarily right. It's like, that's just my experience, and I like it an awful lot, and it makes me think I think my bias makes me think that some things are worse than they actually are. So having said that, I know your buddy, I remember commenting on, I think it's vintage style, almost vintage style. Is that the channel?
Yeah, Jake almost vintage style. Yeah.
I saw one of his videos about, I think he was a little clickbaity in the title, which is great. I love it. It said, Chrome XL, it's the most overrated thing I've ever seen, or question mark. Like, and I hopped in there. I was like, hey, like, that's cool. Like, not everything's for everybody. And I actually, and he and I maybe should do a chat sometime too. But I mentioned a comment like, hey, you know, you mentioned all the things that you don't like, but you kind of missed like the big things. And for me with the Roy boot, when I was talking about the sizing, is I think they're technically like too small for me. Like the side of my foot sort of sticks out over the welt a little bit. But I feel like the Chrome XL is almost like you want that a little bit. Like maybe it doesn't look correct, but it's so comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I commented there, you know, he was saying, you know, the Chrome XL, like I don't see a reason to buy it, but you know, there's a reason that leather has been a standard for 100+ years. It's super comfortable. It's fairly versatile. You know, it's got a really crazy history through 2 world wars. So you can use it in all sorts of stuff. But it's at the end of the day, like I think the number one thing is like fit, like we're talking about. But also, you know, do you like the way it looks? You know, if you don't like it, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. It's just that's not for you, man. And that's cool. Like that's why there's different tanneries, and that's why Horween literally makes an infinite amount of different leathers. So there's something for everybody. I don't think it needs to be this like battle. And I'm never about to tell somebody like they're wrong, because they're not. it's purely subjective. And I think the other levels in there that are perhaps less subjective are like, is it going to fall apart? And how's it going to wear in? So I think by somebody like you explaining your experience with, you know, how did your Chrome XL wear in? It's kind of notorious for sometimes having a loose sort of junky break. And sometimes it's absolutely perfect. The long story short there is it really depends on the bootmaker or the shoemaker. Are they doing a good job cutting their patterns into proper sections of the hide? Because it's not like you're cutting fabric. It's not the same everywhere. The fibers actually move in different directions depending on what section of the skin you're at. So if you're trying to cut your upper from like the belly or the neck of the animal, you're going to get more looseness. And that's why I respect, and surprisingly so, respect somebody like Grant Stone. If you take a look at, I mean, I only got a couple pairs, but every single pair that I've seen online, and the few pairs that he brought into my shop a year ago when he came down for an interview, all the product that I see was cut so properly, and it's so hard for me to convey the level of experience that is required to properly cut Chrome XL, and it shocks me very much that it's being done in China. So that level of knowledge that whoever's cutting over there is very high, and it's completely shocking because I'm seeing some stuff made in the United States that's not cut as well. And that's right. There's a longer story there too. It's, you know, it's a lot more wasteful and more expensive to not cut everything, but you're going to get a better product by leaving some on the table. You know, there's some brands that have got a little bigger and maybe have been acquired by larger companies, and they're trying to maximize for profit. And you see that. And it's a little unfortunate, but some people don't get it though. You know, some people see the looseness and don't care. And then there's dorks like you and me that see it and get pissed. Yeah. Although I'll see it and I like, honestly, I don't really care. Like I'm not so much of a snob. I want something that's comfortable and like feels good when I walk around and doesn't look like crap. I don't know. I don't really care. But there are people that are really big on the break of the leather, where the toe flexes and you see that delamination and pebbling and sort of creasing where the toe meets like the body of your foot.
Yeah, that's true. And these are my Grant Stone diesel boots in Chrome XL. And sorry, my camera really sucks. But yeah, you're right. Like the way Wyatt articulates it, he's so right. Like he says, at his factory they cut the Chrome XL correctly as to create like the ideal boot out of that, whereas not all makers do that. So yeah, for example, I have some Alden tanker boots in Navy Chrome XL that have a lot of loose grain actually.
Yeah. On the upper or on like the quarter pant, like the inside quarter or the backstay?
It is, yeah, it's on the quarter. I don't know if you can see it.
See, that makes me less mad. Although that one's pretty loose.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather have them cut it there than like where the toe is. Right.
Yeah. On the toe, there's no loose grain. The toe is pretty good. it's got
I kind of give that like a maybe a pass unless it's like super pipey on the side.
yeah on this side in particular. I don't know if you could see. I'll overlay a picture, but you could kind of see that there's a
Yeah, it's
lot,
a little loose.
yeah, lot of ripples going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you know, part of me is glad that I got to experience, some loose grain, so I didn't know what it is, because I never worked at a tannery, so I don't have like firsthand knowledge. So I like to like at least get to experience some of what people might complain about. That way, I know better. So,
Do you have any of that Badalassi stuff around?
oh, I do.
When Wyatt was in, and you saw the interview a few times,
Yes.
he
Yes.
was really, really into that. And I actually was impressed with how nicely it polished up. And that leather, what's your experience like with it? Because I felt like the break was kind of poor. Like it's a veg, so it kind of, to me, it has sort of like a veg break, which is again like not better or worse. It's just a little bit of a different vibe. It's a little bit more casual in the same way that like the Horween veg, like the Dublin and stuff, is a little bit more casual of a vibe. Are you seeing that sort of break on the Badalassi?
Yeah, I'd say so. And I think Truman, they told me that they don't run Badalassi because it's actually they weren't impressed with something. And I think that might be what you're talking about, the break, or maybe it was too thick or something. I forget. But yeah, I think they're patinating pretty nicely, in my opinion. And it is just completely different from a Chrome XL. I actually have my jacket made out of Badalassi.
Oh, the luster looks great.
Yeah, this is called Russet Badalassi. I don't know how well it's coming through on the camera there, but
It looks really, it almost has like a wet look to it,
yeah,
which I like. Does it have a little bit, I see it even in the low quality, it kind of has like a sugary break where it's not pipey and loose, but it looks like, to me, it looks like the finish layer, like the top coat sort of finely separating out. And it looks like you pour a little bit of sugar like into the palm of your hand. I
right.
kind of like that on a jacket, to be honest.
Yes, I think it looks really good.
Is
Yes.
it light or heavy, like mass wise?
Oh, it's heavy. It's
Yeah.
heavy. It's not light like a suede or a kudu or a moose. It's quite heavy.
Do you like a heavy in mass jacket? I'm trying to distinguish between thickness.
Yeah.
Or would you prefer like a little bit of a lighter?
Yeah, I prefer the heaviness. Like Jake at Almost Vintage Style says, he likes to feel bulletproof when he's wearing his jacket, and that's how I.
I like that. Okay. I've never felt like I was cool enough to pull it off. so I actually made a few jackets at one point in time. But like I never got excited about it because it was just like wasn't inherently me, and we were like selling too much other stuff. But yeah, like I when I see a Chrome XL jacket, for example, from somebody like Arrow, I'm like, oh my god, that's crazy. Or even Shot. It's like so cool looking, and then I pick it up and put it on. It's like, man, it's like wearing a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've never worn it for an extended period of time, but I get the sense that it might be uncomfortable, but maybe not.
Yeah, they're so heavy, and yes, they are kind of stuffy. And I have one in natural Chrome XL. It's natural Chrome XL horsehide, very thick, and it smells like horse. If I'm sitting in it for a long time, like my body heat sort of heats it up and cooks it a little bit, and you start to smell the horse, and it's actually kind of unpleasant. It gets past that initial really good Horween smell, and it gets into like the actual hide of the animal, and it's like, oh, this isn't actually all.
And knowing what goes into that specific leather, I know what you're talking about with the smells. You're literally heating up like waxes and oils and greases, so you're kind of activating that like in a sense that like a candle would be activated.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about, because so like your individual journey. So you started out working at Horween, at the Horween Tannery. How long were you there for?
Well, I was there for 14 years.
Wow.
Roughly. And I grew up with Nick Horween. We went to middle school together, and we were total dorks together. Like looking back, it's like, oh my God, we're such idiots. Just all the stupid crap we did, which I have a feeling was like not out of line with what most people did. But that
Right.
was the relationship I had with Nick.
Yeah.
And we both went off to college. I moved out to California and he went to Vermont, and then he eventually moved to New York, and I was living in California, and I moved back to Chicago while Nick was still away in New York. And Nick's actually, Nick Horween's a very accomplished chef. He went to culinary school. He went to Le Cordon Bleu in New York City, and ended up working some. He would do like private, like fancy catering for like individuals. So, anyways, he ran a business there, and I was working at his with his dad, and I ended up getting the gig there because I just moved back to Chicago from California, and I super poor, didn't have a job, and I've always been friendly with the Horweens, and Skip actually mentioned to me, he said, Natalie, Skip's daughter, is having a graduation. Why don't you come down and, help me cook, and we can hang out? And so I went over there, and we like had a little grill out for Natalie and her friends and on their graduation. And Skip said, we just had a fire recently at the tannery. I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. He's like, yeah. And the real problem is we're such an old company that all of the formulas are on paper. I'm like, oh man, that could have been pretty bad. So he's like, yeah, we got pretty lucky. We're talking about tanning formulas and finishing formulas. And he says to me, and I've always been pretty nerdy and like into computers and stuff. And he said, I know that you're pretty good with computers. Why don't you come down? And I think he was envisioning somebody like to type it into Word or something like that. So I said, sure. He's like, why don't you work here for the summer and type in all the formulas and get the hell out. But so I showed up, and I started working with the tanner, Chris Kolblinger, entering in all his formulations, and I would put it into an Excel spreadsheet. And I was looking at this thinking like, why don't we make this variable? Because what was happening was every time Chris Kolblinger would tan a mill of leather, he would have to weigh out the material of hides that he's putting into a drum, and then make fractionally like each ingredient that would go in based on that stock weight. And he would manually calculate those. And I saw him doing that one day. I said, what do you do? Like, what's going on here? And he's like, well, like it's not always at 2,000 pounds. Sometimes it's 1,500 or 728 or whatever it is. And I said, well, I have all this in Excel. And basically I made them like variable formulas so they could save the tanner time. I think they saw how I took that, and what ended up happening was that summer job ended up lasting over 14 years. So working there was amazing, and I fell in love with the leather. I think it was the experience of being able to work with somebody like Skip Horween every day, and his passion is also contagious. I think that's probably where I'm getting a lot of it from. And if you ever have a chance to watch a video with Skip in it, he's incredible. He's just amazing stories and such a good storyteller. To be honest with you, before I worked there, I thought leather was brown, and I thought it was one thing and it was just called leather. But it turns out you can make an infinite amount of leathers with different materials that you can tan into it, and an infinite amount of colors. So that experience was eye-opening. And then on top of that, the way that I noticed that the leather aged was like also quite intoxicating for me. And what I ended up doing was I would cut little pieces off the edge of whatever leather I saw at the time, and I would put in my pocket just to see what's it going to do. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that I think that was sort of the start of me making wallets and things that you put and that you carry around with you. And my business partner, Dan, at the same time that I was going through this, like put stuff in my pocket, I was also learning hand sewing and sort of crafting in my living room. And he was doing the same thing, and we didn't know about it. And one day we both sort of mentioned to each other, like, hey, you want to see this thing I've been making? And I said, yeah, sure. And he made a purse for his wife. He came in and showed it to me. I was like, man, that's really cool. Let me show you what I did. And I think at that moment we were like, man, maybe we should do a little something on the side. And that's how Ashland Leather started. And that was 10 years ago now, which is also really crazy to think about. So I'd been working the 2 jobs for 8.5 years, and a couple of years ago, I like was so scared to bring up the thought of parting ways with Horween, and I still love everybody there, and we have like such a great relationship. But I mentioned to Skip, I've been thinking about this for a bit. I don't want to harm the tannery because I was doing stuff for them. So I mentioned this concept for me to take Ashland full time, and he was so supportive. And I gave him offered him a huge runway. I said, look, whatever time you want me, like I'm going to stay here. And he was supportive to the point where like he was helping me leave, because I think he's a fan also. And it's worked out really well for both of us. We buy a lot of leather from them, and I'm able to share that with a ton of people now. Like last year, we had over 1 million minutes of watch time on our YouTube channel, and we sold tens of thousands of different products. So it's been really like a wild adventure from that graduation party to you and I talking today on Zoom during the pandemic. Right? It's crazy.
It is crazy. And you know what? You are the one person that I have to say is like the ambassador. I mean, I know you don't work for Horween currently, but you're really in a lot of ways the only ambassador I've ever known from Horween. Like I've been so fascinated by the tannery, and I've tried to look up interviews from like different people at the tannery and try to get like an idea of like what a tour through the tannery would look like and things like that. And there's not much out there, but then you come along and you're like the expert because you worked there. You've got so many insights that like I listen to your videos and you say you feel like your content is starting to get redundant, but I learn something every time you post.
Oh, nice.
Literally, like every single time I get a deeper insight into the mind of like somebody that worked at Horween. It's incredible and it's fascinating, and I nerd out on it for sure. So yeah, I will say that I sort of consider you an ambassador of Horween. Like
thanks. Honestly, that is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to promote them. Okay. Which is interesting because, and Skip will point blank tell you this. He'll say to you, he says, "Look, like we're not the star here. Skip doesn't see the leather as the star. He wants to promote his brand, the people that are his customers. So he'd much rather you say, oh, hey, I love Alden, or I love Viberg or Grant Stone or Rancourt or Quaddy, all these different places. He'd much Wolverine and Wilson's their biggest customer. He'd much rather you be interested in them than him. I think he's a little overly modest. And I think, and that's because of that mindset that he's had, that he's purposefully avoided. They don't advertise. They don't do any marketing. They've kind of like just played it cool. And I always felt like I said, that experience that I had where I didn't know, I thought leather was one thing. I think that sharing my like realization with people is really important, because it like helps people understand like there's a difference and here's what to look for and here's what I see. Let me explain to you what I'm looking at, and then you can start to think of things in a different way and maybe pay attention to things like the break or the feel or the smell or like how's it going to wear in. Like, let's research these things a little bit more. And I think a brand like Ashland has found a nice audience with people that turn out to be quite like myself, where we just want to dive deep on a singular fascinating thing. And perhaps sometimes it's more exciting to do the research and the understanding than to actually have the thing, which I don't know what that's about, but I feel that about a lot of things. It's really exciting to like find out information about like a really deep dive into, I don't know, whiskey or whatever. So I think I'm starting to cultivate a little bit of that crew right now, and I love it. People that are into this happen to be, by chance, like the nicest people around, just want to help each other, and that's what I love.
And you're so right that like the people in our community, it's very much a gentleman's community. Like nobody's out here to troll, nobody's out here to get at each other. We're actually here to like listen to each other and figure this stuff out, which is what I love about it. So not only did I come into this like finding wonderful leathers and wonderful footwear and leather items that, made my life better in many ways, but I've also found a community that keeps me coming back, because seriously, like the community, like the people that watch our videos, they leave the most thoughtful comments, the most insightful comments. These are people that take this stuff seriously and are interested, and they're nice, legitimately nice people. You can tell. This, by the way, is my favorite wallet from you. This is Amaretto Shell.
Oh, you like the Tony? Yeah.
That's the Tony the Ant. This is first off the most. Oh, it's my favorite wallet of all time.
It's interesting because on the video here, it almost looks more like a whiskey.
Yes, exactly. And that was going to lead me to another point, not to get off track, but there's an Instagram account called Don't Shine Your Shoes, and he posted recently, and I was thinking you would have like really good insight to answer this.
Let's do it.
Yeah, because he posted a picture about shell Cordovan, and he's got several colors of rare shell Cordovan, and he asked, and I'll show you the picture here, but essentially what he says is he posted a bunch of colors. There's Amaretto, Whiskey, Ravello, Color 8, and Color 8 next to each other.
Okay.
And he says that all shell fades to a, quote, a mean color, or a common color, that most shells fade to, and he doesn't know why that happens.
I got an answer for you.
Okay, cool.
The stains that Horween uses on the Cordovan specifically are a little bit different. They're made with what's called an acid dye, and they tend to fade in sunlight. And you could do this experiment, which it's kind of cool. Actually, it's really cool on some colors, but you can sort of like sun bleach it. And I believe it's the acid dyes that are used in the Cordovan staining process that fade with sunlight. The other thing is like when the Cordovan is tanned in a pit, the color that I'm seeing on this guy's post, it's a little darker than like what it naturally looks like. So you might just be seeing the color fading a bit. Honestly, those all look pretty badass. Yeah. You got to realize also this stuff is handmade. Like the Cordovan is not incredibly consistent, which is, if I were to have been self-critical of my past self, is like that was one of my jobs at Horween, was to be as consistent as possible. At a tannery, their main function is to turn a hide, which is infinitely variable, into the same thing every time. Doing that in the way that makes a product that we would call it saleable, right? So I could take a piece of leather, and I actually have some spare like paint in my basement here. I could like dump a bunch of paint, and it's going to look eggshell white or whatever the hell paint I picked, and it's going to look like that forever, but it's going to look like paint. So there's really a zero-sum game, as far as I can tell, between the overall, like, in my opinion, like positive appearance of the leather, sort of more of a natural look that's going to show you a little bit more character and a little bit more depth of color, sort of like the things that like leather nerds like myself are really into. There's a balance, and it's a zero-sum balance between that awesome natural character and like consistency, because the only way that you can make something perfectly consistent that's not going to change is to paint it or like cover it in some non-leather material. And at that point, to me, it's like, why are we even making leather? Why don't we just make plastic, or why don't we make cloth, or whatever it is? An interesting example that maybe is not the best is, you look at car interiors. It's like that leather is very heavily finished. And it's because it has to be, because nobody wants their car interior to change color, and nobody wants their car interior to pick up the blue from their denim. They kind of want it just to look nice and clean all the time, and then to call it leather. It might be a little bit more comfortable in terms of performance. But that really is how everything washes out to me. you're sort of balancing this like perfect thing versus something natural, and it's a tough challenge.
One fateful day, it rained and it formed just the worst water spots.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially on the cap toe. So I had my cobbler put a mirror shine on it. So he,
Oh, I was gonna say the shine looks great.
yeah, for
Were
sure.
you still see those spots?
Yeah, I still see
Hmm.
the pigments have shifted around quite a bit in the vamp there. It's hard to see, but it is pretty splotchy.
I don't know why that happens, because honestly, like all the shell, I've put up a video of like them making and finishing the Cordovan. They dip it in a tank of water. I mean, and the leather's got to be wet at a certain point in time for months. It's so
Right.
it ought to take water. And usually when I get like a little bit of like if I splash in a puddle and there's some like water spots, I think the best thing to do is like a damp cloth and sort of just to brush it back. I try to not put too much stuff on my leathers. But sometimes I see this like puffy look. It's almost like the water will create a puff, and you see that a lot on veg, and I don't know what it is. There's some sort of interaction. Maybe it's the acidity of whatever water that was interacting with the acidity in the leather. But that's not pleasant, and I'm not able to get those like puff looks out. But usually, like the spots, I can get out with just a damp cloth.
You know, it's funny, those puffs that you're talking about. I noticed that because I just got the Maduro Shell Edward boots from Grant Stone,
Yeah.
and I literally stood outside and it wasn't raining, it was misting. And I got those puffs. And
No, no.
yeah. I mean, I'm not worried about it because however it's going to age, I want it to age that way. You know what I mean? The one on the top, I don't know if you can see too well, but
Oh, geez, those are puffed and not just little dull spots.
yeah, that's where water hit and
Oh
it
God, that
just
was was it rainwater?
no, it was literally just it was just misting out. That was it. And I wasn't out there very long. And it so and this is the new plain toe blucher derby that I just got for comparison. So like, yeah, this is unworn, literally fresh Maduro shell, and then this is
Have you tried anything on that to fix it?
No, not yet, not yet. I'm not overly worried.
And it's raised, like it feels textured when you run your finger over it a little bit. Or do you
Um,
recall?
well, no, it doesn't feel raised, but it appears like it is.
Yeah, I think you could fix that with a damp cloth.
Okay.
Honestly,
Okay. Cool.
try,
Cool. I'll
try
try it.
it. I mean, that would be the safest, easiest try.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so this chat we're having like is super important because somebody's going to get a shoe like that and going to go, "What the hell? These are terrible boots. Why are you doing this to me, Grant Stone?"
Right. Right.
But maybe that's a leather problem. I remember a couple of years ago we had there's a company called Shinola that makes pretty nice watches. They make a bunch of stuff, and they were making leather goods, and I think they still do make leather goods. They had a bag, and it was believe it was a green Essex bag, and they had it in the window of their storefront for like a year, and they had a customer's like, "Whoa, what's that bag? I want that." And they said, "Well, that's our show one. We can't sell you that, but like, let me pull you another green bag." Turns out it was really like a cobalt blue Essex that was just sun faded for 2 years, and they couldn't figure out what what happened. But that's the leather's going to change. I think that's sort of just like a sad reality. Is like you can't really leave stuff in the sun. The
Yeah.
one that bums me out the most, and this happens on wallets, is and anybody that has any veg leather product, you got to be really careful about temperature. And sometimes I see customers that will show me their wallet. Maybe they live in, like, the one example I'm thinking of, this person lived in like Las Vegas.
Okay.
And they said, "Hey, I'm a construction worker in Las Vegas. I beat the crap out of this wallet. It's holding up great, but like, what's this dull spot?" And he showed it to me, and it sort of looked like an oval shape, like sort of like where it touched his butt in his back pocket, sort of like right there.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit dull. And what ends up happening is, like, once the veg tan leathers hit a certain temperature, I believe it's between 120 and 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and you have an extended period of time like a couple hours at that temperature, you will cook the any veg tan leather. It is not resilient to heat, which is why a leather like Chrome XL was created. Is it's quite resilient to heat. So a shoemaker can introduce some steam into their manufacturing process to last that Chrome XL around the last with more heat. You can get a little bit of better last and use some heat and moisture. Where on a veg, it's like very delicate. You can essentially create a potato chip by applying too much temperature to any veg tan leather. So anybody that's got a piece of veg, like don't leave it like on your dashboard, like in the sunlight in Las Vegas, or even in your pants. Like I've done it for me. I cooked it in Chicago. It gets pretty hot. I've cooked one just because I got a hot butt.
Steaming. Wasn't Chrome XL used in World War II to like wrap plane engines or something like that? Like it was.
Yeah, there's they use it in service trucks and in tanks. There's certainly more uses, but what they were using it for was seals, like motor seals. And the reason that the leather seals, they still exist today, they moved away from leather seals and moved to synthetic stuff, which is cheaper. But the reason that the old timers liked the leather seals is it wasn't like a binary sort of functionality. It like with a synthetic seal, it's either working or it's completely not working. Where a leather one sort of slowly degrades. And back then, like even when I was working at the tannery, like these guys know what the machine sounds like and they can feel it. Like the vibration might change. So you might imagine like a service truck driver in World War I, like, hey, my truck sounds a little different, or like this feels strange. Like, let's take a look. And they would notice the things before they'd break. So that's where those pieces of leather, Chrome XL specifically, was used. In World War II, it was still used for motor seals, but they found another function for it. And you might look this up and you might have heard of this called marine field chew, which is if you take natural Chrome XL and flip it for rough out, they were making these rough out natural Chrome XL plain toe boots. And they would use it in Northern Africa during World War II. When they would get sand in the boots, they found that smooth Chrome XL feel would more easily remove. You could just dump out the sand, as opposed to the like suede sort of flesh side of the Chrome XL would get a little bit more embedded in there. So you saw a lot of that being used for boots in World War II.
And that's what I love about leather is the history and the different applications it's been used for in history. And in fact, before we started, I was nerding out on your blog and I was reading the what was it? The thing.
Oh, I have a blog still. Honestly, like that blog is sort of dead now. I should probably bail on it completely, but I've been mostly doing it on YouTube videos. But there's some like honestly, like I put a lot of time into writing some of those, so I'm glad that you read it. Somebody read it.
Right. No, the best thing that you posted was something about the general. Let me
General Patton, or like not General Patton. His 100-year-old letter.
Yes, the letter. Oh, wow.
What was that guy's name?
Incredible. Yeah. Hold on. I have it up still. Yeah. General Pershing's
Yeah.
letter. Yes. And he was talking about back then, he was saying, we would like to request wine or dark brown butts and to pick out extra good butts as these were to make riding boots for high government officials. Yeah. Let's see. He says, these butts are to make riding boots for General Pershing. Some time ago, we sold a few number 1 Cordovan butts to the Secretary of Congressman Felon, a brother of a Lynn shoe manufacturer, who made a pair of riding boots for Colonel Sweetser.
Sweetser's aide, where the colonel got the boots, and it was finally traced to I. Horween and Co. So, in as much as these butts are for such a distinguished gentleman, everyone is quite anxious to give him the very best. It's like, man, these guys like spoke or wrote incredibly. And then the bottom, there's the actual ad from Faulkner and Son.
Yes.
For military work, the best boots are essential. Faulkner and Son make nothing but the best and are equipping thousands of British officers with footwear. Write for descriptive booklets of boots, leggings, and spurs. Also self-measurement apparatus. Regimented if unable to call. I love it.
Just the best advertisements back then.
If and when you ever get a chance to come visit us,
Yeah.
you walk in the door at Horween, and that letter is like right there. It's crazy. So they have that, and then across the hallway is every Super Bowl ball. Horween makes all the NFL football leather and the NCAA football leather and all the NFL, or excuse me, NBA basketball leather. So like sporting good leather's been a big deal for them. And Wilson for a bunch of years, I think they stopped, which is why Horween doesn't have the panels anymore. They would make a commemorative like leather panel plaque with like a leather panel of the ball for each of the Super Bowls, and would have like this team versus that team. Here was the score and the date. It's like pretty cool. Horween is basically a museum that is a profitable private business. It's not a museum, but
yeah, it's a museum that's still in operation essentially.
It's wild. I mean, if you watched I did a video this year with Skip Horween. It was about the thickness of the leather. Like, talk about like, first of all, like I made a video about like how thick is leather, and like thousands of people watched it, which is like, it's hilarious to me because it's so down the well. It's like just so deep that like what could possibly be interesting there. But it turns out like there's so much interesting stuff. And one of the things from that interview that Skip described is the splitting machines that they use. The technology hasn't really changed, so they're still using machines from like 1900. Keep it repaired. It's those things are properly maintained and they can last you forever. The other crazy thing is that building was built before electricity, and back before electricity, all the stuff was sort of like steam powered. You could look closely if you go to the alley behind the tannery. There's still railroad tracks like in the alley, and those railroad tracks weren't for trains necessarily. They were for like carts to come off of barges that were just like a mining cart just full of coal, and these dudes would just shovel coal into their boilers that would turn a wheel that would turn a belt to another wheel. And then I imagine a tannery or like any industrial building in the Industrial Revolution was just like this massive just network of like pulleys and belts going from floor to floor, and they would connect directly to each machine off of that one like coal powered pulley. It's pretty wild, and you can see how they've modified these old pulleys to be driven by an electric motor now. But if you ever walk in there, take a look in the ceiling, and there's old fans you can see the belt drives for these old fans. It's literally a museum, and they don't seem too interested to like take those old things out. They just kind of leave it there. The tannery at Horween is built in such a terrible like modern manufacturing way. It's such an ad hoc system where they go, well, we need to, whatever machine it is, we need to split, and we're going to get a new splitting machine. Where do we put it? And they wouldn't say like, okay, where does it make most sense for like efficiency? They would say like, all right, we don't have any room. Like, where are we going to put this? So they just kind of put it like wherever they can. And that's a big problem when you have a product like Shell Cordovan that takes 6 months to make. You're going up and down and up and down and up and down. It's so inefficient. And it's sort of just an inherent problem with being in the city of Chicago with a 5-story building. Modern tanneries are one floor, and it's a big U shape. You start here and you end there, and you run one product. It's basically like a custom shop, the scale that they run at compared to the rest of the world. So they're not necessarily going for efficiency, which may be good, may be bad. But it's certainly a challenge and like an interesting thing to observe if you ever check it out there in person.
Well, what I like about all that you're talking about, especially the old apparatus and everything that's in place, is like it pays homage to the heritage that it has, right? I mean, it wasn't designed with efficiency in mind. It wasn't designed to be green or whatever, So
Horween works with a company called Timberland, who has very high environmental standards, and for that reason, and they work with Nike, and there's quite a high bar to pass for environmental friendliness, let's call it. So I think you'd be surprised that, and this was part of the like group I was a part of when I worked there, is they come in and they audit you for your energy usage. There is technology that exists that can improve your tanning efficiency, so you can run it with less water, and you can run it with less chrome, and you can run it with less electricity. And even the drums themselves, there are more efficient drums. So the process hasn't changed, but like the science and the understanding of like the action of the pins in a drum can change it. So a quick, simple example that will represent like most of what I'm talking about. So you'd extrapolate this like 100 times over a bunch of different pieces of equipment. Instead of running a drum at like this RPM, they found out that you can actually have a slower RPM that requires less energy with just a different action inside of the drum and maybe some different chemistry to make the take up of the tanning materials penetrate into those fibers more efficiently. So there are things like that Horween has done. Essentially, they have done everything they can to, number one, follow the rules and the laws of our local and state and federal governments, but also to be as efficient as possible. And here's to me, this is a like super, super important topic, because I don't like being wasteful either. That's why I buy a boot that I've worn for 10 years. Like, people buying this stuff aren't buying it for a season and throwing it away. And that's part of the equation that people aren't calculating and aren't accounting for. So Horween makes a leather called shell Cordovan that is, number one, it's 10 times less of the yield of square footage compared to any other tannery. So the Cordovan, for one animal skin, you're getting between 4 and 5 square feet of leather for one skin. Whereas a steer hide, you might get 50 feet. So you're talking about 10 times difference, a tenth of the size. But also the other hugely problematic thing is the Cordovan takes 6 months to properly produce it, right? So you're spending 6 times as long to make a tenth of the yield. So of course your efficiency is going to be terrible. But the thing that they don't pick up is, like, I've heard stories of people that say, hey, these were my great grandfather's shoes. I still wear them and I just put a new sole on them. It's like, yeah, hell yeah. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you had a thing that was worn for 50 years and it's still awesome. So we've kind of created this culture in America, maybe it's just America, that is like kind of just interested in like, hey, what's the new hotness, right? Like, give me the coolest new thing. And then, all right, I'm done with that. But I think there's people like yourself and me that are more into like, I just want like one nice thing. Like, don't put a bunch of crap on it. Like, just give me like a clean, simple, nice thing that's comfortable and that's going to look nice for a long time and not fall apart. Like, that's kind of all I'm looking for in everything. I think there's people coming around to that sort of mentality. I can't tell the pace of it. And something you and I might want to talk about here is there is a ebb and flow of this cycle where I think we're on the uptick of the interest for this sort of leather boots. But 10 years ago, when you bought those J. Crews, that was sort of another peak, and then we had a little bit of a drop. And it's interesting, and Skip Horween and I theorize about this a lot, is what ends up happening is certainly happened for me is, man, 10 years ago, like, I bought a ton of great stuff and I was super pumped on it. And guess what? Like, I didn't need to buy anything for 10 years. So like, when I come on camera and I show you all my stuff, it's like old, not new stuff, you know? Each boot has 20 to 50 years of life in it. So there's no way I'm going to use all these boots.
It's why when I wake up, I put on boots. I don't take them off till it's bedtime because I want as much wear on them as possible. I don't take boots off. I live in boots. So yeah, man. But yeah, what you're saying is so true. Like, and a lot of what you're saying is like, that's the initial grab that gets me, essentially, is like, oh, this will last you your life. You can resole it as many times as needed. This is built to last. This is heirloom quality. This is heritage quality. And so yeah, that got me my first pair of Aldens, and well, the rest is history.
Right. I mean, it's also a fun thing. Like, I have a wall of guitars also. It's fun. Like,
Yeah,
it,
enjoyable.
even my wife like doesn't give me a hard time. She knows that like I love it, right?
Mhm.
If I feel like you got to have something to just be like a total dork about and just like have that, right?
Well, working at Horween, how many different types of tasks did you have there? I assume you didn't just do one thing since you were there for 14 years. You probably were like did a lot of different stuff, I would assume. So,
Yeah, it's a really tough question because in a small business, and right now, when I was working there, Horween had 150 employees, which is still not huge.
mhm.
Um, Even at a company like that, you kind of do a little bit of everything. I'll tell you this: I wish I could have done more like of the actual work. Like the guys there are incredible. Like the union people working the actual jobs, like on a machine. That's a tough ass job, especially in the when the leather's wet. That's heavy and it's wet and you're hot. There's no AC, so I did do. I wanted to learn most of the jobs. I didn't successfully do them, but I did run some jobs in the basement there, the wet departments. And I showed up at 3 a.m. I was super tired. The leather was so heavy and wet; it was miserable. And I did it for a day, and I can't imagine people doing it for multiple days. That wasn't my job, but my job, the reason I had to do those things was to get a better understanding of like what's going on and appreciate those people too. Like essentially, I was not the boss there, but I was like a mini boss. Like part of what I was trying to do was just to make sure stuff ran properly. So when you ask like what's the jobs that I did, it's kind of like a little everything that's non-union. Because legally I wasn't allowed to do a union job unless it was alongside a union person. So to give you an example of that is when I was running the retanning mills, another union member had to be there working with me, so I didn't take their hours away. And it was like that for everything. It kind of sucks just selfishly that I couldn't like run more tasks to like do the real work. um, so what my job ended up turning into was how can I take my nerdy skill set of being able to handle information and process information and create that into systems. So a lot of my tasks were to create systems that would, number one, create us the best possible product in the fastest, most on time to fill our customers' orders and the dates quoted. So I was sort of like an expediter. And towards the end of my career at Horween, I mostly worked with the samples and development, overseeing the finishers that would be making the new developments. I would look at it with them and we would talk about it and try to figure out what the salespeople and the customers are trying to accomplish. So I was like the ground level sort of go between for that, in addition to like managing and creating and running all the systems that I made and implemented at the tannery. So the systems would be like those formulations that I talked about where I type them in. An order comes in, I create that formulation and I distribute it and route it with each order through the tannery and track it. So I created a whole system to like track a couple thousand orders at once. And like, so when a customer calls up, they want to know, or the salesperson calls up and says, "Hey, Timberland wants to know where's their Chrome Excel." I would type in their order number and I go, "Okay, it's for plating or whatever," and I would know, okay, we got about 2 more days. Schedule that out. So it's kind of that sort of operational type of job. We talked about how I've got a bunch of shoes, but like my collection sort of started, I don't know, 15 years ago, and I got hyped on it really hard, and as I imagine most people do, and they have a dozen pairs of like $500,000 stuff. That's a lot.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then the years go by, and like maybe you pick up one the next year, but or maybe none. It sort of peaks and then you stop. What are you looking at getting next, and why? And like, are you selling to like replace a thing, or do you ever do that sort of stuff?
So long story short, like, no, I don't, I plan to keep all this because the way I see it is I've kind of worked kind of hard to acquire some of these, and some of these I couldn't get a second time. So it's like, no, I've worked hard. I paid for these. I love them all. They all fit me. So I feel like I want to keep them so that way I could continue to produce content and continue to enjoy them. You know, like we're talking about earlier, like I do enjoy this stuff, and all this stuff I will wear again, you know, even though some of these things might only get worn once a year, like I still plan to wear them again. So yeah, secondly, like what's on my radar now? Well, thanks to you, marbled shell is on my radar.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I feel like that doesn't translate to footwear as nicely as like a small leather good, like wallet.
Right.
But the ones that it's tough. Like my brother actually today, my brother Matt works with me at Ashland, and he said, you know, why is it that Horween doesn't make so much denim blue shell? And I said, well, you got to realize like most of the Cordovan they make is for the footwear industry, and like it's kind of hard to pull off like a bright ass blue boot or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it, and that's kind of how I feel about the marbled. It's like, man, that's a statement. That's like a pretty strong statement.
Yes, it is. When I got into it, it was like it was all brown Chrome XL. It was all about the Chrome XL and the shell Cordovan, and particularly the brown Chrome XL, the natural Chrome XL, the Color 8 shell, the black shell. But then as I started following you, I started seeing these new things come out. So my question to you is like Horween, yes, they're a company that has been around for over 100 years doing stuff largely the same way, but they seem to be innovating a lot with a lot of these marbled shells. And now I see, I just put in for a pre-order through Pigeon Tree Crafting. I don't know if you follow Isaac.
I don't.
Pigeon Tree Crafting. Yeah. Most of my belts are from him.
Nice.
Yes. He is doing a run through Santalum, the Indonesian maker, for a marbled boot, a marbled leather boot. I don't know if you saw this on Instagram, but I'll show you here. It's crazy.
Is it Horween? Is that black marbled?
I don't know where the leather is. It's actually not shell Cordovan. It's cow hide.
Oh, I saw that somewhere. I did see that.
Yeah. It's crazy.
That's a tough sell, man. I like it. I don't know if I could pull it off though, right?
Right, for sure. But like I saw that and I said, you know what, Isaac's my friend, and I've been wanting some marbled boots for a while. And again, it's not marbled shell, but it looks like marbled shell. It
sure does. Sure does. Yep.
Shell. Yeah. So my question to you is like, is this marbled leather like a new phenomenon?
Well, there's a bit of a controversial actual story to this, which I'll tell you.
Interesting.
So I could lie to you and say like they're trying to do that, which is wasn't originally the case.
Okay.
So, people that have been a fan of me for a while probably would have seen that I started doing something I call like reverse Cordovan for a long time, and it's because so when you work at the tannery, you see so much leather, and part of the process they have the shells stacked up, getting ready for one more process. And the top shell, they always flip upside down, and they'll write like, hey, there's 10 of these or whatever it is on the top one. And they'd flip it upside down. And I would look at that and like, man, that looks so cool. Like those dye marks are like totally crazy. Like that's awesome. Right. So I was like, screw it. Let's make some wallets, and flip it backwards was just like totally crazy because they didn't spend any thought on making that side of the shell. So that's sort of like, for me, a lot of what I do at Ashland is trying to capture sort of like lightning in a bottle. Like I'm trying to create the things that are unique that you can't reproduce and like cut them into interesting spots. And so that's how I came up with the reverse shell. And that's also how we did the marbled stuff. So this is the sort of controversial part is if a Horween makes a color and it's like a custom, it typically happens with people that sometimes want to try something custom, and Horween is very reluctant to do this. But let's say Alden comes along and says, hey, Art Tarlow, the owner's son or whatever, is like getting a wedding and he really wants whatever color, orange shell. So Skip will go like, well, you're like the owner for Alden, like, all right, we're gonna try it. So they'll make a couple and like try it. And let's say like during this trial process, like they're trying to match the colors and like it comes out wrong and looks bad. They don't want to throw that out. So they're trying to salvage that. And what they do is they scrape away the finish and refinish it into something darker, typically black. So that might sound controversial, but like nobody's going to be able to tell the difference. But you know, one day I came along and I see them scraping off that orange or whatever, and I go like, man, that looks pretty crazy. Like, stop. Let me buy it right now. And that's sort of how the marble started. We would just look at it and go like, that looks really interesting. And then over time, with the Horween marbled shell in specific, my business partner Dan, who still works at Horween, he directs them as to what our customers are into. So if you go back probably about 8 years ago to when we first started doing the marbled stuff, you can see it's a little less exciting. Like it's a little less contrasty. And the farther we've gone along now, with Dan's sort of direction to the people running that machine that scrapes off the finish, they're able to get it into a little bit more interesting looks. And even to the point where within the last month, I've had a conversation with Skip Horween is trying even more new concepts with the that's scraping away the finish. He wants to scrape it away, like imagine a circle, and he wants to come at it at like this angle and then come this way and then straight up this way and this. So he wants to create like this sort of like squared off like spiral look. So you're right. Like that's sort of the mentality that Skip Horween has right now, is like wanting to try new stuff. And to come up with new ideas. And it's something like leather, it's very difficult. Like, how do you come up with something new on a material that's so classic like leather? Like, most people just want that brown chrome excel, right? But in my time at working at Horween, they created a new hit, which is now known as the Essex and the Dublin leather. That didn't exist. So there's I call it fishing. Like, we go fishing for concepts constantly, and 1 in 100 is going to hit, and 1 in 10,000 is going to be like a classic. So that Dublin came about because Skip Horween said to himself, like, what would happen if we tanned a steer hide of leather in the same way that we tan the shell Cordovan? And he just put it in the same tree barks as they put the shell in for 2 months in that pit, and did all the tanning, and it turned out to be Essex, and then they put some wax on it, and then it was Dublin. So they're always trying new stuff, and that's kind of how it goes. It's just winging it, like, hey, what if this? And then they try it, and then it comes up with somebody like me where it's like, okay, stop. Like, that's the other thing, is like this restraint part where like who has the taste, and I'm not the most tasteful person, but like typically John Culleton, the salesperson for Horween, really is in touch with like what the shoe customers want, and he'll have a better understanding of like when to stop, because you can sort of overdo it or underdo it, and he has that sort of like tasteful knowledge to go like, all right, that's it, like, done. Like, don't do anything. And hopefully you wrote down all the stuff you did, because we want to do it again, which is another big leather problem. I don't know if that answers your question, if I just got way off topic, but bottom line is to try new stuff all the time.
Yeah, you did, because you personally have introduced me to more possibilities through Horween than I've ever seen before. And before we started, this Zoom call, I was looking on your website and I saw that you did a private stock Tony the Ant. It is sold out, but man, it is the craziest marbled shell I've ever.
Oh, it's not the psychedelic?
No, I looked at the psychedelic, and actually
people went crazy for psychedelic shell.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen before.
Yes. And the psychedelic shell is amazing, but like this particular Tony the Ant is just incredible. It's almost got like it's not smooth. It's like got scarring on it, I want to say.
Is it the reverse UV and raw amaretto one?
No.
Oh,
no.
You're looking at Tony? The
That
marble black shell Cordovan with brand.
yes,
So
that's the
what you're looking at that looks like scarring is actually scars. That's a brand, and
okay.
it's a little depressing to think about because that means that this animal got hot ironed into its butt with whatever that shape is.
Oh, no
So
kidding.
that's like kind of a bummer, but it looks cool too, and it's just like a reality.
Yeah,
You got to realize, like in
right.
America, like we don't eat horse, but
True.
it's pretty crazy to think that most countries other than the United States eat horse. So that was like some rancher's horse, and he had to distinguish it from somebody else's horse, and they brand it. I don't love it,
Yeah.
especially because it ruined a piece of shell, or like
Right.
ruined a piece of shell. It looks crazy. It looks like a Roche. How do you pronounce that? Rorschach test, like that splatter test, where it's like, does this look like a moth, or like it's like an interpretive sort of thing.
Yeah. Right.
But
Right.
that's when I'm talking about like tasteful cutting. Like
Mhm.
that's one example of like, okay, like cut this in an interesting way, and something like I've been thinking a lot about Jackson Pollock recently, where it's
Mhm.
like is it random if you capture it in like you took something that was random and then you like took a snapshot of it. It's
Yeah.
like taking a photo. Like everything that's happening is in real time, and you're not necessarily like planning every single moment.
Yeah.
So a lot of these leathers I think of like as a still photography of like we're just capturing that moment of that leather, and like getting it to an interesting point, and then putting it with other colors that we think look interesting.
Right. In
And
snapshot. Yeah.
the private stock stuff that we do at Ashland, I think is really special.
It is.
Um, if you look at this, like you're not gonna find, and this is only I'm looking at them right now. It's you're not gonna find anybody that does this for like anything.
Right.
Um, and it's hard. And the reason is because it's super hard. So to give you a little insight to like what goes into that is this is the culmination of me collecting leathers for 10 years. And on top of that, it's like the lifetime experience of the multiple members on my team to go into my collection of leathers. And I tell them, I give them free reign. I said, make something that's exciting for you. Like, what is it? Like, pick something that's like, oh my God, that's crazy, and make it. Because if you like it and you're a nerd about leather like I am, inevitably another nerd is going to like it. So we've come up with some really incredible results with that, and like things that aren't expected. It's sort of like how when I decided to cut the reverse side of the Cordovan, it's like that's something I liked. Or when we decided to do the marbled and actually use it for a product instead of like considering it part of a rework, like that's sort of the philosophy that we've always had at Ashland, is just like trying crazy stuff. It just so happens that now that I've started doing more YouTube videos and things like that, we've created some more attention. Um, and it's great because like people buy it, and that helps us to create more awesome stuff. The part that gets a little bit of a bummer is a lot of people get mad at me, and I don't like that. Um, the harsh reality of it is like there's one of these, and I'm doing a better job now of like giving everybody a heads up. So with this most recent private stock thing, the day before I said, hey, here's a preview of everything I'm about to put up tomorrow, and I'm going to put it up at 5 o'clock Central Time. You'll find it on this page. Everybody has free or the same chance to get it. And even with that, I can't tell you how many. I probably got a couple dozen emails of somebody saying like, "I really want that one. Can you just like pull it for me?" And I had to say like, "No, like I want your money to do more of these, but like that's not fair." So it's still quite overwhelming, the response that we get for the private stock stuff. We did 71 items,
Wow.
and that sold out. We didn't sell them all. I think there's like 3 left, but I think most of them sold within the first hour, which is
Yeah.
very intense. So that tells me that there's something there, and that tells me like we're doing something a little special, that
Yes.
people are starting to appreciate. Um,
You
and
are.
it's kind of like that private stock concept is like what you just experienced. Like you're showing me new stuff. Like that's what I'm trying to do. Like I want to show you something that you haven't seen, so you can go like, oh, that's possible. Like let me think about this a little bit more. Like, oh, I didn't know that you could do orange Essex. Like, so I'm just skimming the page here, or like that marbled shell with a lizard print. Like, damn, that's cool. Like, there's so many different things that people don't know can exist. So this turns into a very positive cycle for me, because number one, I can like do this more because people are supporting us, and I'm like, we're so thankful for everybody supporting us, because now we can do more fun stuff. But secondly, like now Horween with the psychedelic shell in specific, I shared the feedback that we were receiving on the psychedelic shell with Skip Horween, and now he knows that there's an interest in it. So now he knows to try to be able to create that again. And the long story short there is like Skip doesn't know if he can do it again. And he's quite motivated now seeing the response from this. So that's sort of the relationship that I have with Horween, is we see each other as like a testing ground, to be able to put stuff out in the world, get some feedback. Like, sure, not everything's going to be a hit, but certainly it would be nice for Horween to know, like, what should I do more of, you know? And you can see that an example of like the marbled shells they're doing a lot more of. They're doing a lot more of the reverse Cordovan, and you can see competitors making that veg that you just showed me on those boots in the same style as the marbled shell. So it's they're sort of like on the leading edge of like these new concepts, which is really special, especially because this is a company that started in 1905. So you're talking about a 116-year-old company that's on the leading edge of innovation for leather. And as far as I see, and I think that's pretty cool. I mean, the fifth generation is in that building right now, and they're still on the edge. So I think it's pretty neat, special.
Yes, absolutely. And you pushing the envelope the way that you're really doing like God's work, in my opinion. Like, you've shown me so many things I never knew were possible. And
I'm gonna keep this quote for my bio. Phil is doing God's work.
Please do, because I believe in that wholeheartedly. Nobody else on the planet Earth is doing, honestly. Like you're introducing things to leather aficionados, because I'm coming into this, it's like, oh yeah, I love Chrome XL, I love Shell Cordovan. Well, where else can we take it? Because variety's the spice of life. People like variety, and that's what you're doing. You're pushing that envelope. And actually, just recently, I saw Mariam Tannery in Italy.
They make nice shell.
They do. Yes, they do a lot of horse rump, a lot of shell. They just released this. I don't know if you saw this. They're doing printed shell now. Look at that.
Is that a print?
Yeah.
That looks cool. It looks like a boarded texture. Here, let me give you a demo. This is a valet training Cordovan that I have.
Oh wow.
But it's like it's got a hole in it.
Oh cool.
Which it's like a full reject.
Yeah.
So if you take a piece of leather and you like, this is the shell side here, and then this is the reverse side. If you take the grain layer, shell's like the worst example for this. But like, imagine this was a steer hide, piece of Chrome XL, and you fold this in on itself like this. So I've got like the corner folded down, and then you sort of press down and like pull it this way.
Yeah.
Let me give you a better example. I'm folding it in half. And then if I press down on the spine here and like keep the pressure on that folded part and then sort of pull it this way, you will delaminate the inside of this in the same way that we were perceiving that break on a toe of a shoe to be negative. That's what that pattern on the Miriam looks like. It's that sort of pebbly delamination. And a bunch of years ago, leather finishers or leather crafters would purposefully delaminate that and then sort of polish the peaks of those pebbles and then leave the valleys like a little bit lighter, so you get this interesting like two-tone effect, which is sort of what you see there. It's a boarded look, and then you may have heard the term box board. So if I board it in this direction, that's a board. If I board it in the other direction as well, it creates this sort of like checkered look. So you're boarding it in this direction, and that's a box board. You can board it at like a plus sign, but also add a diagonal to it, and you get these like crazy different textures. It's pretty. You can do so much stuff, but that technically, like, that delamination is what we don't like in shoes, but like also you can make it look cool too. So this is going back full circle to where it's like, what is good and what is bad. It's like, what do you honestly, the end of the day is like, what do you think looks cool? And that's, if you love it, that means it's good. That's really the bottom line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what you're showing me, because like what you're saying is there are endless things that you can do with leather. Every time I think I understand leather, I see another thing that like totally challenges my preconceptions. Like, for example, like, yeah, I used to think it's supposed to be smooth. Well, but then you have suedes. Yeah. So here's a suede boot, you know.
That looks awesome. Is that Stead?
Yes, that is Stead.
Looks pretty tight.
Yes, it is.
Stead makes really tight nap suedes, which is not easy to do. It's very hard to do, actually.
Yeah, they claim it's made in the traditional methods, whatever that means. But this is Rapello suede. This is Gritstone Storm suede Eagle boot. I just got these in, loving them so far. But yeah, and then so you've got that, but then you also have chamois, which is like a heavily oiled rough out, you know.
Yeah, it's the I'm going to sound like a jerk for saying it in a different way, but we always pronounce it chamois. But I call the chamois, it's an oiled Nubuck. And Nubuck is an important term to understand. Like if you took the grain layer of a hide and sanded it down, it will sort of give you like a tighter sueded look. That's called a Nubuck. If you flip it over and use the rough outside and sand that down, that's more of like a flesh out suede. So chamois is an oiled Nubuck where they took the grain side, sanded it down, and then applied some, and the case of chamois, neat's foot oil to it. So it gives it a little bit more tracking on the nap of the suede, and it also has like a much more rich feel. It's very, very rich. I like it.
It is.
But Nubuck is a very specific thing. It's like it tends to be a little bit of a tighter suede as opposed to like a flesh out suede. Right. Although yours are flesh out chamois, which is cool. It's like a little nappier. It's like a little less tight.
Yeah, for sure. And then, well, here I have some smooth Nubuck. These are the vintage indies in what's called Nubuck. Yes, otherwise known as smooth chamois, smooth chamois. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. So that's the chamois like grain side. That's the Nubuck.
Yeah.
So that's an oiled Nubuck.
Okay. Yes. Because I was always confused because Leather Soul Hawaii sold these as, they call the leather vintage Nubuck. And I'm like, well, vintage, that's not really the name, right? But they call it Nubuck. And I thought that was interesting. Nubuck from Horween, because I didn't know Horween made Nubuck. You know, I've seen Nubuck on like cheaper boots, you know, but not on Horween. But
yeah, it's very, so this is the complicated part where like people can say better or worse, right? And you'll be amazed at how well that specific pair wears in. Mm-hmm. The Horween stuff in general tends to have much better like aging characteristics. So whether it's like a flesh out or a Nubuck or like a full suede, they tend to age a little better on the Horween stuff, and they tend to be, in my experience, a little bit more comfortable. So I don't know how much longer we want to go here, but I get very upset by the sort of marketing spin words that have been put on leather. So you may come across these words like top grain, full grain, corrected grain, genuine leather. Yeah. And for the most part, the way that those words are used in the marketing are very, very misleading. And it's very troublesome to me. So for example, like I can make you, they say that, what do they say? They say that full grain's the best. But like, why? they don't say why. Right. And also, like, I can make you a great full grain, or I can make you a piece of crap full grain. So it's very upsetting. Like, I don't know, you can go to Target and it says genuine leather, and I like Target, so it's like, who cares? Like, if like you like the way it looks, it's, who cares? It's great.
Right.
So, but like genuine leather, like to me, that doesn't say any information. I mean, it just says that it could be anything. It's like,
Exactly. And
so
I've
it
seen,
bothers me a lot knowing,
right.
I think I know too much, and it like really upsets me. So when you say like, oh, I didn't know Horween did Nubuck, it's like, sure, they could do literally anything. And it could be, they could make crap too. But like
Right.
they can also make a great genuine leather, you know. In fact, the Stead stuff, for the most part, is Stead is tanning a byproduct of Horween. For, I don't know if in that specific example, but Horween will have that splitting process, the 120-year-old machine I was talking about. There's a byproduct that is left over when Horween creates a leather to the thickness that they require. There's something called a split, which is like the remnant that suede tanners will buy from Horween and turn into nice suedes. So for us, like, that split is like garbage at Horween, but for somebody else, it's like a beautiful storm kudu, right? Like it looks great.
Right.
So you can't. I try really hard to tell people to like avoid the spin words and look at more of like, do I actually like this? Like, do I think it looks cool? And the second step, I suppose the first step is fit. Second step is, does it look cool? The third step is this from somebody that's a reputable tannery and a reputable shoemaker? Is this something that's going to last me a long time? And sort of in that order, and don't worry about the marketing spin that somebody's putting on it, because it's nonsense. It's just trying to make it sound different than it really is.
Exactly. And I can tell you, I've had full grain leather. I've seen some very cheap, really crappy full grain leather, as people like to call it. So yeah, full grain, I'm with you. It's like, it's a buzz term. Doesn't necessarily tell the full story. I think the full story is difficult to capture. And like you're saying, like, what you're getting at is there's literally an infinite amount of things that you can do with the leather to treat it, the different cuts you can do, the skiving involved, or the skiving, however you pronounce it.
I pronounce it skiving. Yeah, it's thinning it down a little bit.
Yeah, thinning it down. The reverse side, which, by the way, I love your reverse shell Cordovan. It's some of the most brilliant stuff I've ever seen.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I really want a wallet in that. But you know, when I'm feeling like I want some, I just open this thing up and I look on the inside.
So if that's amaretto, that's actually my favorite shell color.
Yeah.
I really like that shade. It's super dynamic. Like,
Yes.
I don't know if you noticed, but like if you take it outside in the sun, like some angles, it's super vivid and like bright orange, and like if you just sort of tilt it, it looks like brown and red. It's
Right.
It's very bizarre, and it's interesting too. And excuse me if you've already heard this, but the shell is kind of like the suedes, where if you have that nap of directionality on the suede, you can sort of like write your name in it. The shell is also very directional, which is why you see the color change. And it's directional for the same way that the suede is directional. Is those fibers are pointing one direction, just on a much smaller scale. So the way that the light hits it, reflects the light in a different way, because of those shell fibers are pointing one angle as opposed to the other.
Interesting. That is fascinating. I assumed that, but I'm happy to hear you verify that, because yeah, it's so true. Like this particular color of shell Cordovan, amaretto shell, it's so brilliant. Yeah, it's like a glowing orange in certain lights. Then you turn it and it's extremely shiny, and you can't see the full depth of, like, especially the marbling. It's got some brilliant marbling on this side, but you can't see it unless you're looking at it from the correct angle.
Huh. That's cool.
So yeah, I don't know if you're capturing any of the. I wish I had
have a hard time seeing it.
Yeah, I wish I had a better camera. I
know what you're talking about, though. Yes.
Right. Yeah, I did a YouTube video on this that I did my best to capture the marbling in this. That it's so brilliant when you see it, and it's, oh god. And now it's picked up some indigo from my denim.
Nice.
It's really just, it's one of the
on the corners and the spine. That's where it looks cool. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really hard with that. That's actually the other reason I started doing videos. Is it was very challenging for me to like properly capture the color of a shell for a wallet in just a still image. So I was doing like just a ton of pictures at different angles, which was also kind of confusing because people were like, "Well, what is it?" And the answer was always yes, it's both. So I
Right.
started doing the videos, and I think people started to go, "Oh, okay, I see. It like it shifts and it changes. It's dynamic. It's very unique." And also, like going back to the finishing thing, is like you could ruin that quite easily just by covering it with paint.
Mhm.
Um, so I sort of see it, and I have a terrible people. My wife specifically makes fun of my quote, but I call it like it's like a wine that you can drink every day, right? It's
Mhm.
something that is great, and then you can keep using it, and it gets better and better. And that's why you'll find the stuff that I sell, the Horween. I only sell Horween stuff. Although in this private stock, we did a non Horween leather for the first time.
Oh, really? Cool. Cool.
Um, I don't even know what it is. I think it's. I bought it from the Tannery Row. It's like a natural veg.
Okay.
Um, but
Cool.
even that product, like you'll see most of the stuff that I choose is stuff that's like very aniline finish, like not much finish on it, and it's meant to develop and change, which
Mhm.
tends to be the scene that's into the stuff. Anyways, I do get people that say like, "Hey, why isn't this still garnet or whatever?" And
Mhm.
I say, "Well, like that's part of the charm. Like it's supposed to do that." But like
Right.
some people don't get it, and like I feel bad because it's not what they're expecting. Um, but that's to me,
Right.
that's part of the leather is like this is something that's going to change and develop to your style. In the same, it's very analogous to raw denim in that way, where it's like, oh, I wore these and like I can tell that's my style because like I really wear them hard and like you can see exactly where. Like I had a when I got married, I used to have now I have this like rubber ring
Oh, cool.
but I used to have like a thick ass metal ring, and
Yeah.
it would end up scratching when I was working at the tannery. It would like scratch all the leather when I would be doing my job. So what I ended up doing was taking that metal ring off, and I would put it in my front pocket, and I would get this really cool like circle of the ring on my jeans. So like, okay, now those are really mine because like I wore them that way. It kind of is special in that way, and
Yeah.
that's why I like this material as opposed to something like canvas, which is not going to really give you much character.
Right. Right. That is so true. Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah, man. Yeah. This is amazing hearing all these insights because yeah, if I'm not mistaken, aniline is like a painted finish, right? It,
I did a blog post on this. The
yeah.
way I think of it is the difference between aniline leather and a pigmented leather is this sort of a spectrum.
Okay.
Let me rephrase that. It could be naked or pigmented. And that's the
Okay.
spectrum. So aniline is like just above naked.
Okay.
Naked means there's no stains applied to it. That's like just the skin naturally with whatever tannins and oils that you put into it. And then pigmented on the other end is like full opaque, lots of solids in the finish where you can't see through it. It's kind of like putting like if you imagine a skin of leather having little holes in it for the hair holes, it's kind of like paving over that. Like if you're to make an asphalt on a road, you're just like covering all of it, so you don't get all those potholes and like all the naturalness of the road. Like that's what you're doing when you're fully pigmenting it. I did do a blog post on this also. If you're into that, let's see if I can find what it's titled. It's called "What Is Aniline Leather."
Okay.
And
Yes.
I did some like close up photos of what it looks like when you start adding finish. So the spectrum I gave here is the crust, which is like naked,
Mhm.
aniline, which is just like a little bit of stain to sort of like level it out, and then semi aniline, where they put like a drop of pigment into those stains, and then like a full pigment, which looks like paint. And
Okay.
the best way that I've come across to think about leather finishing is to think about wood finishing. So you can take a piece of wood for your kitchen table and you can cover it in like a white paint, and you can tell that like it's a little bit like wood, but it looks like paint. Or you can apply any color stain to it, and you still see more of that like natural character of the wood. There's more highs and lows in colors. There's a little bit more texture, and now you're just putting a color on it. That's the difference between a pigmented full finish and like a aniline like stained, just a stained piece of wood or a stained piece of leather.
Because he was explaining how you infuse metal into leather to make it a stronger product. And I never knew that Chrome Excel meant they were literally infusing metal into the leather. Like that was
Yeah.
the craziest thing I ever heard. I didn't.
That interview with Esteban, I actually watched again kind of recently. I was kind of cringing at how like poor the quality of it was. But
But
I actually met with Esteban a month ago, and he and I want to do another video like that, because you're right. Like these are like, I didn't know that information, and when he said Wolverine as like a joke,
yeah,
like that really hit me, which is why I led the video with that. It's like, oh, I get, okay, it's both. It's like human and metal, like it's organic and metal.
yeah.
That's chrome tan leather. Like, okay, that makes sense. Like you get some more performance out of it.
Early on in my days researching style form, they used to talk about how shell cordovan doesn't stretch at all, and that is 100% true. It does not.
Right.
Like I have some here. It doesn't stretch. If you were to stretch it, you'd actually crack it. So there's no stretching shell. So the way that they fit on day one, they basically fit forever.
Right.
Whereas Chrome XL does stretch. So for example, like these are 8.5. I could have sized down to an 8.
Yeah.
And if I sized down to an 8, they'd probably fit perfectly. Now they fit kind of loose because they've broken in so much. It's created more room inside the
Right.
volume.
You know what? I had that same. Sorry to interrupt you, but I had that same experience with my diesel boot. I love that. So I find this dichotomy very interesting. The natural Chrome XL or the Dune Chrome XL diesel boots that I have from Grant Stone.
Mhm.
When I got them, I was like, oh my God, like this is a game changer. These are so comfortable out of the box. Viberg is the absolute opposite. Like these are the least comfortable ever. And it's interesting how that has shifted as I've worn them. And I don't know if it's a Grant Stone thing or a Chrome XL thing or like the size I ordered from Grant Stone, but the Grant Stones have actually become like mildly less comfortable, where the Vibergs have like, I don't know how many times more comfortable they are, but they've sort of gone in different directions, which is quite interesting. I think if I were to do it again, I would get a smaller size in the Chrome XL, and like it would suck for a little bit, and then just like break them in to it. Because to give a physical example of it is we do Chrome XL belts at Ashland, and I wear my belt pretty hard. Like I'll torque it closed.
Mm-hmm.
You could get like 3 or 4 inches of stretch on a Chrome XL belt, even in that honking thick 9-ounce stuff. So when you're talking like 5-6 ounce on a shoe, like you can stretch that pretty far. So it will give around your foot in a pleasant way.
So yeah, Chrome XL stretches absolutely
big time.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Would you like to know why it stretches?
Yes, I would.
This is a great example of like how crazy Horween is.
Yeah.
So you might not know this, but leather tanneries sell leather based on the square footage, like the area of the hide. So they're taking these infinitely variable hides and trying to make it in the same thing. But during that process, they will change in shape and in size. The thing about the Chrome XL that is very unique is they are air drying it, and they're not. There's multiple ways to dry leather. Horween chooses the stupidest one of all for Chrome XL. It's stupid in terms of like making money, but like brilliant in terms of like making a great product. You can, I'll break down the drying methods. Air dry it. You can just hang it. There's a method called toggling where you clip hooks on the leather and you put it on a frame and sort of like stretch it in all directions. There's another dryer called a vacuum dryer where they decrease the pressure and suck out moisture. And because you lower the pressure, you can dry veg tan leathers at a lower heat as to not cook them. And then there's a dryer called a pasting unit where they take literal glue and glue this leather to a frame, and they sort of like spread it out on these frames. And all of those have different characteristics. And all of them, with the exception of air drying, tend to make the leather larger. Whereas air drying, it's like drying your clothes. You might notice if you ever dry your jeans in the air, you'll notice like, man, those like really shrunk on me. The same thing happens to the leather. So Horween is actively losing money by air drying Chrome XL because they find it makes a better product. And we talk about the break. You see how like some sections of the hide are a little bit loose. That again, those tend to be the lower density fiber sections of the hides that create this sort of pebbly look. And I find it to be like unpleasant, and most people agree. It's not smooth. It's it's not consistent with the rest of the leather. It's not inherently bad. I if I had it on a toe of my shoe, I would be pretty bummed out. And the guidance that I give to people is whoever created that piece of footwear for you, if you find some looseness like that, ask the foot maker if that's in their normal standards, and just say like, hey, I noticed this kind of bums me out. It's like, is this normal for you guys, or did I get a weird one? Because 99% of the time, if you come at somebody in a reasonable way, they're going to hook you up and they're going to get you something that you like. Nobody's trying to screw you over, especially me. Like that's my guarantee for everybody. Is like, I don't rip people off. And I'd imagine if that's Alden, like if you come at Alden and say like, look, I got this, it's kind of bumps me out. Like, is this normal? And they might say, yeah, like that's normal. Sorry, you gotta live with it. Or they might say, you know what, that one got away from us. Like, we made a mistake. Let's make it right. So they might do that for you. But Horween air dries the Chrome XL, because think about that. The delamination happens because the leather is not as tight in terms of like the microscopic fiber of the hide itself. But by air drying it, it's just like on your jeans where it shrinks back in. You're sort of making it a little bit tighter and more dense, and that's why they do that. It loses them on each side of leather. You're losing like 4 to 6 square feet times $10. So they're losing like $60 a hide or a side on each piece of Chrome XL that they sell.
Wow.
So they're not optimized for. That's not environmentally friendly on that scale where they're saying like, how many square feet of leather did you make per kilowatt hour of electricity? Like, they're losing there too. They're just doing it because it's a better product. So that's pretty, to me, like that really, to me, is a testimony of like what Horween's up to. It's like, they don't care. Like, they're just going to make it better. That's, I mean, talk about $60. Like that's a lot. Like that's like 20% yield that they're losing.
So I'm always fascinated with this concept of the carpenter's door is broken sort of a scenario where. So I'm curious, like, are the guys that work in the factory, are they all wearing like indie boots, or are they wearing sneakers? Like, they don't care, they're just there to make money, or
that's
are they
tough. Yeah, it's
of the leather.
We talk about this a lot, or we used to talk about it a lot, Skip, Horween, and I, about how it's like a guy working at a Lamborghini factory. It's like not everybody there's driving a Lamborghini. Really? So no, the answer is no. But what Skip has done is he gives everybody that works there gets a subsidy to pay for some footwear. And it has to be safety footwear for the tanneries. But Skip is pretty generous. I mean, he bought me a few pairs of shoes. I think actually those Roy boots I was wearing today, he bought for himself, and he's like, they don't fit me perfectly. And I was like, I've always wanted Roy boots. So he gave me those a bunch of years ago. Wow. So, but it's not just for me. Like, he does that for other guys, or if, I've done it for people that say, hey, I saw that wallet. What is that? And I'll go, oh, well, and then next time I'll just surprise them and show up and give them one. It's kind of like that. Is like, we want to share, like, you want, and especially Skip being the owner of that company, he wants everybody to like get it and appreciate like what they're doing and like understand how special it is. But the reality of it is, like, nobody working in the leather industry is making any, like, nobody's getting rich. Like, if you look at the cars in the parking lots, it's like, we're not fancy folk. I've been driving the same car since 2008, and I don't have a problem with it. I love it. I don't care. We're just kind of like, I think most people just want to show up and do a good job, and it's sure more money is like great, but it's not. I suppose I'm a little privileged to say it, so I won't. But I think a lot of the union guys could use some more money. The wages aren't like amazing, but it's very, very good for like a manufacturing job in Chicago. They're making a lot more money than minimum wage, and the jobs are worth it. Like, it's hard. It's really, really hard work. So and they get great benefits and stuff. Like, they have really good healthcare and time off, and it's it's not like anybody's super impoverished, but it's also like nobody's getting, including the owners, like nobody's getting rich.
So I'm really curious because I mean I've gone digging for your boot collection, and you post certain pairs, but you never show like the full collection. So I'm really like curious. What
So, um, if you want to be a total dork, which I don't necessarily recommend, I did a live stream in like around Christmas time
Okay.
of most of my collection. The problem for me is like I have so much and it's like all over the place that I'll forget some. But
Okay.
what I tend to, I have a lot of Alden stuff. I've had every pair of like their standard indie boots. Which my is that a pair above you to your right shoulder?
Hmm.
Is that a 403 or whatever?
This here is the 405 Good Eye, sir.
405.
Yes, sir.
And that's the Chrome XL one?
This is a calfskin tan. Calfskin.
Yes. So that was the owner for Alden came into the tannery once,
Mm-hmm.
and I was asking him about sizing and stuff, and he sized me for a pair of 405s.
Okay.
I don't like them as much as the 403s, which I believe are the Chrome XL ones.
Mm-hmm.
The Chrome XL ones are just better, and over the years they've kind of changed the leather a little bit on the 405s.
Mm-hmm.
They used to call so they call that calfskin. It's technically not, and I don't know if I should call them out on that, but
Yeah.
it's a calf like product that Horween makes called Austin. Is the
Oh,
leather? It's a full grain. It's technically waterproof for 10,000 flexes. It's like a little bit of a drier vibe than the Chrome XL, which is like super rich and oily. And then the craziest rich and oily one is the Kudu Chrome XL, which is like that dark brown and has a lug sole. I think those are 404s. I don't know what they are. I have a pair of those too. They're like really tough.
yes.
They're kind of, the problem with that Kudu Chrome XL is it's like so oily that it just like sucks up dust. They get like really dusty, but they're great because of the lug sole. You can just like kind of wear it for whatever.
Really?
So I have all the indie boots with the exception of the shell ones. A very inspirational boot for me is the 1,000 Mile boot, and from Wolverine. I don't know if you have. Do you have a pair of 1,000 Mile boots?
I do. Yeah, I do have one pair. I got them from gilt.com like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Gray suede. I got them for like $50. I use them as work boots. I
Yeah.
have no pride in them. I beat them up. Yeah, but I do have one pair of Wolverines. Yeah, so
Those 1,000 Mile boots are philosophically the same thing that I'm trying to do with Ashland. It's like, I guess most like everything I look at on your shelf behind you is kind of the same vibe where it's
Yeah.
like no nonsense, right? Like if you look at some more recent Cole Haan stuff, they're like, well, let's put some neon green on this like side of the sole to make it different.
right.
I mean, that's fine. Like somebody likes that. I don't necessarily want extra like frills. I kind of like. I noticed my friend and I were talking about boots maybe a decade ago, and we noticed that it's hard to find. Maybe not just boots in general, but like or things in general. It's hard to find like a simple good thing, and that's what I like about 1,000 Mile boots. There's things I don't like about it too, but aesthetically, the visual representation of that boot is like what I'm trying to do in wallets. It's like I don't want any like weird emblems. I don't want it. I just want it to be like a simple, nice thing. So that the 1,000 Mile boots have a few pairs of those, and they have a special place in my heart. I've got a pair of brown Chrome XL. I bought my wife a pair of black Chrome XL. I also have the I believe they call it Harvest, which is a leather from Horween called Tundra, which is a Nubuck. Actually, maybe it's a full grain. It's full grain, the Harvest. And those kind of didn't wear in that great. They get really dusty, and I haven't like washed them. I got a pair. I have a lot of boots. and I will inevitably forget some. I have a pair of quaddy boots in black Chrome Excel with they have the leather, like a softer leather outsole. The bottom is a leather called Chrome Pack, which is kind of like Chrome Excel. It's not like that. It's not like a leather sole like most people would imagine. It's like a soft, like old school moccasin kind of thing, where like when you step on a rock or something, you like really feel it through. They're cool because they're all blacked out. I like that sort of stealthy look where it's all black everything and the laces are black. Um, there's been customers at Horween that have come in that I've met with and they like inspired me and I buy products from them. And some of them don't exist anymore. Like I have a pair of boots from a company called Boston Boot Company, and they kind of did the opposite of what I'm talking about, where they like added things for aesthetics that like didn't add to the function that to make them stand out a little bit differently. Like they had all black eyelets, but one was like a red eyelet just to like sort of set them apart. I was like, okay, that's interesting. I don't know if I love it, but they kind of sold me on like we're selling a plain toe Chrome Excel, sort of like a Chukka. It's like a low shaft boot, and it was like $100. And this was before Thursday Boot, so they kind of like got me with that. I was like, man, like let's see what these guys are up to. So I bought a pair from them and try to support them. I have a lot of shoes too, and if you bear with me, right behind me, there's a couple pair. There's one pair that's like really special.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you heard of Oak Street Bootmaker?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I've followed them for quite a while.
So this is a pair of their I don't know what they call these. Um, they're boat shoes. But this
Right.
is like when they first started. I picked up a pair of these to support him, and like look how my foot has like pooched out the side of it.
Yeah.
But this is what I was talking about with Chrome Excel, where maybe there might be something to sizing down that makes it better.
Mhm.
These are infinite. Like actually, I finally broken them a little bit. But I've worn these so much in all scenarios, and they're perfect. They're so. This is the by far the most comfortable pair of anything that I've ever worn. I don't.
Interesting.
I don't know why. I have two suspicions. Number one, the Chrome Excel I find to be terribly comfortable. The other thing is these are unlined Chrome Excel, so there. I think there's something to that. When I interviewed Wyatt from Grant Stone, like almost exactly a year ago, I took him out to dinner afterwards, and I was like, you know what? I noticed on these shoes here, they're unlined. Like, why don't you do some online stuff? And he said it's really, really hard to do an online shoe.
Yeah.
But man, they're comfortable. I saw Viberg did a pair of online natural shell boots for like a tattoo artist. I think they blogged about it. And I was like, man, those look great. I kind of wish I could have had those instead of my lined Vibergs. So I have and I didn't know this until I talked to David. Um, I have a pair of natural shell plain toe boots from Viberg on
Yes.
the 210 last, which he's like, oh my god, those are 210. I was like, well, yeah, what does that mean? I guess I don't get nerdy on last enough. But
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, they don't like you can't get a 210. But like I guess I
Yeah.
have that. I like it. But
Yeah.
so I have those. I have the Grant Stone diesel boots. I have a pair of long wingtip natural Chrome Excel shoes from Grant Stone also. I bought a pair of old Florshimes off of eBay in shell that I don't really wear that much. What other boots do I have? I've had a lot of stuff, and I'm sure I forgot most of it.
Yeah.
Where I wash out on everything is like number one, it's got to fit right. I find Alden to be pretty forgiving on fit.
Mhm.
I've had good luck with the Barry Last and the True Balance Last. That Barry Last on the Roy boot is mega comfortable, at
Oh
least
yeah.
for me. On the Chrome Excel, the crepe soles, like
Yeah.
Context clothing kind of nailed it with that makeup a bunch of years ago, and that's like the era from when I got it.
Okay. Nice.
Actually, the Chrome XL Indie boots are quite comfortable too, and those are also the or True Balance Last.
Mhm.
They're not the very last, but those are also sized down lower than what I normally would choose. Like,
Okay.
so I don't know. Like, they were a little tight on me at first, but man, those Chrome XL Indie boots are super comfortable. It's so hard for me to know. Um, but I really feel strongly about the sizing thing, and I think that's something that you've echoed in some of your content.
Yeah, for sure, for sure, definitely. Because most of my life, I wore the wrong size. I was sizing too small in most everything, and sitting at my desk or being at work, I was wanting to kick them off, and I would kick my shoes off, because it's just miserable,
Yeah, yeah.
because blood, if it can't circulate back up into your body, then you're not living a very healthy life. Like blood has to be able to circulate freely through your entire body. So if you wear something that's too constricting at any point, it creates a dam, if you want to think of it like that, and that's not comfortable. So yeah, when I first stepped into the Alden True Balance Last, it was like I wanted to cry.
Is that Norwegian split toe was your first one?
This was, I think, my third pair of Aldens. Actually, my first pair of Aldens I actually don't have anymore, but these were my second. These were the Alden 405s. And yes. Because my first pair of Aldens I sized incorrectly. They were the Alden 403 Indie boot. I bought them in a size 9. They were a good fit for about 3 months, and then they were just way too big.
What's your Brannick?
I'm a 9 Brannick. So
it's a little big.
Yeah, it was big. It was way too big. So after they broke in, they were like way too floppy. So I ended up getting some 403s in a size 8.5, and they continue to serve me well. So
yeah. Okay. So you're kind of. I had the similar experience where like, okay, these are perhaps a little small, but like they really, really wear in well on the Chrome XL. I guess we could talk about Wyatt, who says like leather sole is like the best by far. What are you into? I've been into day night. I know people are kind of hit or miss on that, but
yeah, I love day night. I'm like neutral on day night. Like it's like the most neutral sole for me. To be honest, this is my favorite sole, the Neo Cork.
Yeah. Now, it's kind of soft enough, but also like durable.
Yes. So I find it just so supportive. But yeah, like Wyatt really opened my mind to the leather sole. That's why I just got my Roy boots resoled to a leather sole, is because like Wyatt talks about his grandpa, which I heard in your interview. His grandpa was always like asking Wyatt, like, why would you put rubber on that boot? Put leather on it.
Right.
Put leather on that thing. And that really opened my eyes. Like from his perspective, leather was the classiest, the best, the highest tier sole you could have on a boot. And so I started giving it a chance. So I actually started having my cobbler put toe taps on my leather soles. And so now I'm wearing my leather soles, and you know what? They hold up very, very well, surprisingly well, like better than I ever thought they would anyway. So like,
what about traction on them?
Oh, traction, and this is something I mentioned recently was, the traction is not there, but I find that because I'm a snowboarder in the wintertime.
Okay. There you go.
my mind is always on balance anyways. So like, if you have poor balance, you'll slip in anything. And yes, the only time I've ever slipped in a leather sole is when I'm not paying attention to my balance. So like, I put down my steps before in a leather sole, but honestly, like even in ice, if I'm just being mindful of my balance and if I'm well,
true. You know what though, those 1,000-mile boots that I love so much, they're the slickest soles in history. They're so slick. I mean, I hear what you're saying too, because like I'll wear them in the winter, but like, yeah, you gotta like really pay attention.
Yes.
Even a lug sole, you're gonna slide on ice. Yeah.
Yeah, I slip and slide in day night. I can ice skate in day night soles. So but yeah, long story short, I don't put all the reliance on my soles. I put the reliance on my own balance first and foremost. Now, that's not to say there's not going to be a one-off chance where yes, I slip and fall and my leather sole shoes, but ultimately I find that, because I'm also into biking. You saw my bikes.
Yeah.
I'm used to walking into a bike shop and a bike salesman trying to sell me like a $500 bike seat because it's 3 grams lighter and higher density foam than the seat that I'm using, because to a professional, that's something that's important. To me, I don't care, but I'm just a plebeian when it comes to bike riding. But in my mind, the high density foam, really expensive bike saddle is the same, almost equivalent in a lot of ways to a leather sole. Like, it's high density, it's the most natural if you think about it, because it's skin, it's not synthetic material like a rubber. So if you're standing on it long term, like all day, like I just had these Roy boots resoled in JR soles, and I've been standing on them for the past 4 or 5 hours, and I'm still comfortable because it's just such a high density material. That leather to stand on is, the more leather between your foot and the ground, I think, is better for your posture and just for overall support.
Interesting.
So yeah, I noticed that I can't stand on rubber for as nearly as long as I can on leather. So
is that I wonder if that analogy holds true. My family and I grew up bike riding, and I still enjoy cycling a lot.
yeah.
And I always recall that. So, for example, we used to do this bike ride across the state of Iowa every summer, which was really fun. And we would, when I was a kid, we would get neighbors to do it with us, and they were like not really cyclists, and they would, we'd train together, and one of the dads, like older guys, would show up and say, "Hey, look at this saddle I picked up. It's really soft and squishy." And we'd be like, yeah, like that's going to suck for a while. Like, you want firm as hell. You think that analogy sort of translates properly or the same way onto soles?
I do. I think it's a direct translation. Because yeah, I'm with you. Like, I bought some really cheap, squishy bike seats from, I think, Dick's Sporting Goods for like $20, and they, like you said, they suck. They're terrible. They're good for like a mile. It's like, oh, this is comfortable for like a mile. But yeah, try biking 50 miles in that thing. Tell me how you feel. It's not going to feel good. So same thing, I think, for footwear. I equate the leather sole, especially a thick leather sole, to a high density foam bike seat. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like I noticed, like on my day night soles, yeah, like for example, this is a Grant Stone micro stud sole,
Right.
and I wore these 2-3 times since I got them so far, and they're great, but honestly, I can't stand on them as long as,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, I definitely find that something like this with the thicker leather sole is much easier. And here's the other thing: it wicks moisture better, it breathes better. So like your foot sweats out, I don't know how many cups of sweat per day, which is kind of gross. Now think about the leather. The leather's not letting
It's not going anywhere. Yeah.
it's staying in there. The leather sole, the rubber doesn't let the sweat go
Okay,
anywhere.
so they're cool, a little bit cooler on your foot too.
Yeah, the leather, due to the fibrous nature of it, will allow moisture to wick out. So
That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
yeah, that's just something I noticed. So like it breathes better because it lets moisture out. It's moisture wicking, kind of like, certain athletic clothing. It's designed to be moisture wicking. It's not cotton, which retains moisture, holds it. So like if you're jogging and you're wearing all cotton, the cotton clothing like holds onto your sweat.
Right.
And whereas the newer like athletic clothing, it actually wicks the moisture out. It evaporates as you go, and that's what I think the leather sole's doing.
Man, I didn't think about that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's kind of why I've come to prefer the leather sole, actually. So
That makes sense. What's I don't know why it's slipping my mind. Maybe I'm drinking too much beer. But the crepe sole.
Yeah.
And what are your experiences with the crepe sole?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that, because I actually came to the conclusion I don't love it. I found that like it's good at first, it's comfy at first, but actually it's funny. My cobbler, I brought him in to him, and he literally ripped this thing right off. Let me see. Like I brought him into them. They're 7-year-old Roy boots, and he literally just let's see, I have it here.
He just like peeled it off with his hand.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
no.
Here it is. I got it on loop on Instagram. Sorry, this is terrible.
Oh
Yeah,
man, yeah, okay.
yeah. He just rips it right off and slap.
Oh, well, that's a
slap.
shame.
Yeah. But no, don't get me wrong. Like it was a great soul.
I mean,
While
mine have held up, and I mean, I'm not trying to say I'm right and you're wrong. I've had
right.
a good experience with mine, but that's interesting. Why do you think it's separating that easily? Or
Um,
just you wore it a lot?
yeah, I wore it a lot, and throughout the life of the sole, I had to constantly reapply glue to hold it together because the flaps of it were actually coming separated.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't.
that's interesting. I haven't seen that yet. Maybe I just
Yeah,
haven't worn them enough.
yeah.
Okay.
On that particular pair, I have some here as well. This is held up better. Let me see if yeah, that's separating a little bit. Yeah, let me see here.
That's where it starts to go first, is on the sides.
Yeah, on the sides there. On
I
the
better
on
check mine out.
Yeah, on the Roy boot, it was a lot worse. But yeah, and ultimately, like, so the good thing I'll say about it is these are some of the least slip resistant soles I've ever walked on. So like these could actually walk on ice without slipping in most cases, which is
Yeah.
but that said, I did not find the squishiness to be very supportive long term.
No, it's certainly not. Yeah, you move a little bit. You
Right,
kind of
exactly.
float. Yeah, the
Exactly.
other thing that was interesting about the Roy boot, my buddy Nick Horween, was wearing a pair of those. I forget where he went, but he went off to some. It might have been a hide supplier, and he stepped on like oil or something, and he said it like melted his soles. So I don't think they're very resilient to like certain things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and kind of like how you brought up the squishy bike seat earlier too. That's kind of what I equate the crepe soles to, the squishy bike seat, because it's like, yeah, it's great when you first put them on and when you take a quick walk in them. It feels like a dream come true, right? Like it's fluffy, like a
Right.
cloud.
I mean, honestly, I kind of like I wore them around today, and I was like, these are pretty comfortable. Like I
Yeah.
had forgotten because I've been wearing these like hiking shoes that are like waterproof and lug sole type of things for snow and ice and stuff. And I
Okay.
put those Roy boots on. I was like, oh yeah, these are nice.
Right.
So maybe it's just that perspective shift. I really like speed laces. Like, sure, they still take a while. I've ripped the crap out of my laces. Do you have like preferred laces that you're into? Do you like
Oh,
the flat wax stuff, or have
yeah.
you ripped any laces before? I feel like I ripped them. Maybe I'm tying it too hard or something. And actually, I wanted to give a shout out to Grant Stonigan because I was noticing when I was lacing up the Roy boots today, they had the 5 speed hooks, where the Grandstone has the 3 and they're spaced farther. It's like so much more pleasant to lace up. So
Yes.
that was thought out properly.
Right, right. Yeah, Grant Stone really does a good job with their speed hook laces. And I'm actually in the minority. I prefer speed hooks. Most guys don't. Most guys
I
like,
like them.
yeah, me too. I love speed hooks. I hate lacing through each
It takes
island.
forever. It
Yeah,
takes long with the speed hooks.
right, right, exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
My father-in-law wears Velcro shoes, and he watches me tie my like speed hook shoes. He's like, "How do you do that every time?" I'm like, you just do it, man. He's like, "I just Velcro them." Like, yeah, that's because you like Velcro shoes.
Velcro 'em shut.
He'll never see this. Sorry, Steve, if you do.
Right.
He's not trying to buy leather shoes.
Oh, he's watching. He's watching and stewing right now.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it takes forever. Even with like without the speed hooks, I don't know. I don't think I would do it, to be honest.
Right, right. I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, as far as laces go, my favorite is the rawhide lace from Guarded Goods. I don't know if
Mm,
you're familiar with that shop.
I am.
Okay, yeah, Jesse at Guarded Goods. He sells one of the best rawhide laces on the market, and it's a 72-inch lace. You can cut it to size, but I like to leave it long enough so that I can wrap it
You
around.
go around the shaft, yeah.
Yeah, in most cases, yes, yes.
Are those? How do those differ from the stock grandstone ones. I like the grandstone ones. I feel like they're gonna rip soon though.
Right, right. The Grantstone ones are a little different in a few ways. That's a really good question because I've never actually articulated that. But yeah, the Grantstone ones they are made in Kentucky, so they are also American made. But they seem almost like there's more. Good. That's a good question. They seem almost in a lot of ways
They're spongy a little bit, right?
exactly yes. Sponge is the word. Whereas the guarded goods ones they sort of have more texture, and so when I lace them, they hold together better. I feel like the Grantstone ones almost have a little bit more slip, so they come undone more frequently.
Okay. Thank you for saying that because I thought I was tying my shoe. Okay, two things. I thought I was tying my shoes wrong, which it turns out I kind of was. Like I don't know how to describe it, but turns out if you do the two bunny ears and just like turn the bunny ears together, like that holds.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing that, but like
Yeah.
I was doing like around the. Oh, my camera went away.
Uh,
I started to do the like around the tree tying like originally, and those no matter what, those always come undone on the leather laces. But maybe it's because of the laces themselves. Okay.
yes, yes, and this is a realization I just recently had with rawhides is when you're lacing them because I used to double tie them to keep them from coming undone.
Right.
I've found that if you just create a tension point, so I do a single normal tie, but all you do is let me see if I can demonstrate it here. All you really do is you just create a tension point, and so essentially when you tie it, what I do is I pull it real tight once it's tied. I just
Yeah.
put a lot of pressure, and that creates a cinch. It cinches the leather tight enough to where it will never come untied until you pull them open.
Right.
If that makes sense. So that's what I do now. I do a single, just a standard knot, and I cinch it tight right there, and that way the leather actually has a tensillary strength that holds itself in place. If that makes sense. So that's what I
Interesting.
do. Yeah, yeah, that's what I found works best for me, anyways. Now on the Grantstone laces, like yeah, I feel like they still slip out.
Yeah. They're kind of long. Maybe I need to cut mine down too.
Yeah, and they are a little long too. But don't get me wrong; they're great laces. But I love the ones from Guarded Goods. Like I'm just very partial to
Yeah,
those.
David Vintage Future sent me some flat waxed from there. Actually, I put those on my 1,000 mile boots, and
Yeah,
they look really nice. So yeah, I need to hit up Jesse. That's Guarded Goods guy, right? I think
yeah,
it's Jesse. They
yes,
hit him up and get some leather laces.
yes, for sure. He's really good. And then also for Jesse at Guarded Goods, he also sells these round um, cotton laces, which I put in
So
all in.
Alden sells. I actually kind of like those like very fine like round laces that Alden sells like for their dress stuff, but they
Yeah,
break, man. And
yes.
I don't know. I found those to be very nice until they broke.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
yeah, maybe that's just a thing about fine like a smaller lace.
Yeah, yeah, for
Or
sure.
I'm doing it wrong. Like sometimes I'll hit the speed hook at like I'll like thread the speed hook through the lace on like a flat waxed. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a baby with laces. It turns out I just like can't figure out laces.
That's okay. That's okay. I think a lot of us are the same way. Like I've been doing rawhides for many years, and I just this year discovered the thing about cinching it shut. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. Don't feel bad, but yeah, I've got
I
the
kind of
round.
like they look pretty sleek.
Yeah, they look good in the thin eyelets with the Aldens, and I think it's because of the thin eyelets. I'll emphasize like I think
Yeah,
size has something to do with how the lace looks.
yeah. Those diesel boots have the really chunk
Yeah.
eyelets.
Right. Diesel boots have the chunky eyelets, so I like the rawhide in there. Full disclosure, before I started this interview, I asked some of my friends if they had questions for you.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah, my one friend Adam Grimm, his question is, I can't think of any questions for Phil. The Fat Herbie is the best wallet ever made. So that's his question. To our
I am quite biased, but I know you don't have a Herbie, but
true. I do
you
not
know
yet.
Do you? I know you're a minimalist. Style. Do you carry your wallet in your front pocket or your back pocket?
Um, both.
Yeah,
Yes, it rotates. Yeah, it
I'm
goes
like a
back.
exclusive back pocket guy,
Oh,
and I mean it's like not a better or worse thing, right? But
mhm.
what was your friend's name?
Oh, Adam Grimm.
Adam. Yeah, I mean Adam's kind of right, in my opinion, because I don't have a Herbie. Actually, maybe I do have a Herbie here somewhere.
Yeah.
But that wallet, the way it's laid out, is unique in a sense. I guess we've been copied a bit, like since I made that on my couch 11 years ago or whatever. But the way that the cards are not stacked on top of each other, like if you imagine a bifold wallet, there's typically like three stacks of cards on each side that sort of like sandwich and close together a bifold.
Okay.
On the Herbie, those cards are not laying on top of each other. So because they're laid out like this, how do I describe this without showing a Herbie?
Yeah.
They're not stacked on top of each other like this. They're sort of
Okay.
separated out. So it's roughly the size of a passport. And because the cards are not laying on top of each other, for
Yeah.
me, it lays flatter in the back pocket and it's just more comfortable. And there were like a couple other unintended side effects of that is it's thinner, but it's like visually larger. So people are turned off because it's like doesn't look like what they think a wallet should be.
Mhm.
Um, but it just tends to be flatter and more comfortable in your back pocket. It's different than sitting on like even this Capone, which I really like. It's still like a little thin, but well, the camera won't focus. But because all the cards are stacked in one sort of space, there's no surface area to spread them across. So this is kind of like it's not that thick, but some
Yeah.
wallets can kind of be like sitting on a softball. It's like way too thick, and that's not the best experience. So spreading out that content over more surface area, Fat Herbie like makes it more comfortable. But the unintended consequence that I didn't think about is it holds all paper currency, so it can hold dollars and euros and yen and everything. It will hold every paper currency in the world. And there's something about this large slot in the back with a thumb notch. It's like sure a money clip's like easy to drop money into the center here, but like the
Yeah.
Herbie is just so pleasant and easy to use. It's kind of like your Tony, but like even the Tony is like a little like pulled in and tighter, like where it's sometimes if you put a ton of cards on the inside, it still can be a little hard to put some cash in the back. But the
Right.
Herbie is just like so easy with that little thumb notch that you have there. The
Mhm.
Herbie's a little bit bigger. It's I don't know. It's really easy to use cash. I hate using cash, but when I have to, like, I'm usually glad that I have a Herbie. The
Yeah.
other unintended thing about the Herbie that's cool is you can slide a passport in the back of it if you have to, like in a pinch. I mean, we make passport holders, but sometimes you don't want to bring like a whole separate thing. I've done it where I just like drop a passport holder into that the paper money slot, the bill slot in the back.
Okay.
I don't know. I
Cool.
I like Fat Herbie.
Yeah.
It's one of our best sellers. People buy a lot of Fat Herbies, which I
Yeah.
love. It's not like if sometimes I have to think about my business from like a layperson's perspective. So it'd be like if my mom wanted to buy my dad a wallet and she searched leather wallet and the Herbie came up, she'd be like, "What is it?" Like that's weird. It's different. So it's like a little bit more of like an enthusiast sort of thing. The
Mhm.
other awesome thing about it is like it's huge. So you get like this huge piece of leather and like in something like the reverse of the marble that we're talking about, you get this like huge context, which is sort of analogous to like a hole cut shoe or something like that, where
Yeah.
you just get this like, man, that's like a big chunk. Um, so I don't know. Like I love the Herbie. The Johnny the Fox is our best seller because I think people envision a wallet to look like that. Um, but it's kind of like we sell a lot of wallets, and it's kind of hard to innovate a wallet. It turns out it seems like most people have their mind made up of like what it's supposed to be, and they're not really interested in like messing around with that. I mean, I'm looking behind you, like
Mhm.
I don't have the finest fidelity of this image, but like from this perspective, they all basically look like the same silhouette. And I know that's not true. I think that's how people look at wallets. They go like, oh, they're all the same. Right. So like one that's like so strange and like huge, you'd be like, that's not a wallet. That's like something weird. So that's kind of a challenge that we run into. But luckily we run into people like yourself that like are patient enough and thoughtful enough to like realize and recognize that there's a difference in things, that they'll take the time to like think about it and try it out. So we're lucky in that regard.
Yeah. So two things. One, you sold me on a fat Herbie. Now I just have to figure out what leather I want it in. And
Oh, actually that's an interesting, like, I know, knowing you, like
yeah.
you said you like marbled stuff. Like
Yes.
knowing you, the Herbie really really lends itself well to like big pieces of things that are kind of variable. Like, you know, like this money clip, we call it the Capone. This one's made in English tan Dublin, which
Ooh.
does have some like natural character and randomization to it. So even something like this is nice. I find something like people buy a lot of Chrome XL wallets from me. I find that to be a little bit less interesting. Like it's a little bit too clean. But there is something also about like a clean big piece. But I really think the Herbie shines with like big randomization, reverse shell or marbled. It's like, and you open it up on the back of it, you're like, damn, that's like. Sometimes I wish like I didn't cut some of the marbled shells and just like frame them, because without the full context of that whole oval shape, it kind of loses a little bit of magic.
Okay.
And I don't know if I've ever shown you some of those full pieces of shells, but like a big piece of marbled shell with all the variation, you see all of it. It's different. It's a little bit more magical. Same on those like psychedelic shells where it's like, oh my god, this. I don't know how to describe it, but there's something about it, more context in those types of things that are better. I suppose it'd be like a Jackson Pollock painting where like if you just cut like a little square of it, it's less special. But like if you have this huge splatter painting, it's like, man, that's cool. The bags that I've had that are all leather are just like, some of them are great. Like I actually like some briefcases that I've used,
Mhm.
but like an all leather backpack's like a little heavy, and
Yeah,
like an all leather duffel is like a little heavy. I mean,
it
it's
is.
not ideal, but
Right.
we're trying to develop some bags to like combat that a bit. But yeah, so yours is all Chrome XL. It's got to be heavy. It kind of reminds me of the jacket chat we were having too. It's like, that's why I was asking. It's like, it's a little heavy. Like maybe it's uncomfortable. Like I don't know if I'd want to walk around with like a 20-pound leather sack without anything in it.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
true. That's true. And I'll tell you what, like I'm with you. There are some downsides to having a bag and made out of Chrome XL. First off, like you're saying, it's heavy. Second off, I had one of the rivets pop on me because you can't overload it with gear. You
One of
can't.
the shoulder strap rivets.
Yeah, yeah, it just popped out.
Oh, that
Luckily,
sucks.
yeah, yeah. Luckily, my cobbler was able of all of all people, my cobbler knows how to do a rivet, so he did one on there, and it's held up since then. But yeah, the other thing is like yeah, it's yes, it's heavy. It doesn't breathe well, and then it's hard to get on too. Like it's not
Yeah.
easy to get on. Like to get it on, like I have to make sure that the straps are straight because otherwise
Yeah.
crooked. I don't know. There are some
I
complications.
gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you something. Until last year, I was using a like corporate gift style bag from Wilson. It was probably like a $5 nylon bag
Yeah.
that they gave us at the tannery because they're customers, and I wore that. Like I don't care. Like I guess honestly, like, and it lasted. Like it didn't break. It had a lot of compartments that I liked. But it was like a $5 whatever, and it was light. Like, and there were a few years where I would bring, I had these like multiple $1,000 like leather bags that were super nice that I didn't buy because I couldn't afford it. But like Skip would give me like his old bag, and it was like this amazing, like perfectly crafted full leather thing. It's pretty awesome, but like too heavy. So like as much as I love leather, like I see that there are some downsides, but it really comes down to like, for I guess with your shoes is a little different, but like for me, it's like, what are the things that you're going to touch? Like like a handle is really good for leather, or like a shoulder pad maybe might be really good for leather, but maybe like a whole body. Like again, as much as I love it, we don't need everything. Like my desk is not leather. Like it might be kind of cool, but like it doesn't have to be. Sometimes you need a balance of stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, not everything needs to be made of leather.
When we first started Ashland, we had like one order that was like massively huge for these Japanese customers, and I was talking to this graphic designer that made our logo, and I was like, I'm thinking about making some leather like sheaths. Instead of putting these in cloth bags to send to Japan, like we'll make these Cordovan wallets and like put them in leather like pouches. And she said to me, she's like, like sometimes like you don't need all leather. and I was like, it's actually kind of a really good point. It's like you need a balance of everything in life. And as much as I love leather, it can get me into trouble loving it too much because there's other materials that might serve a better function.
That's true. Like you want your boots made out of leather, but you don't want your pants made out of leather.
Well, it depends on if you're into Judas Priest or not.
Exactly. And in fact, yeah. No, I'm with you. There is a balance.
When I'm looking to get new boots and stuff, I might have to pick your brain to hook me up to tell me like what to be looking out for.
Absolutely, my friend. Hey, anytime. This has just been the best talk, Phil.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor, a pleasure, and let's do this again, my friend.
And this is the most I've drank in like a year. So thank you for that too.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad we were able to toast to your
and cheers, man. Happy pandemic.
Absolutely, yes. and congratulations again on the child.
Oh, thank you so much.
That is a monumental, celebration and milestone in your life. So
yes, even if I'm not sleeping, it's all good. And by the way, this is me without sleep. So imagine how great I would be if I was well rested.
You're very articulate for somebody who hasn't slept. I'll say that.
I've been working 2 jobs not recently, but working 2 jobs for like a bunch of years. So I figured it out a little bit.
Yeah, you have. You're an expert, sir. All right, good stuff. Well, Phil, again, thank you so much. And let's do this again sometime soon, my friend.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, man, so much. Thanks for hanging out.
Yes, likewise. Thank you, sir. All right, until next time.
All right. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.